Hello. All right, so we're gonna be playing some Old Republic on our Jedi Consular. Try to wrap our storyline up, and we're just gonna do a slop day today, reacting to some internet drama or stories, and we have a Veritasium video to react to as well about asbestos. Fun little substance that everybody loves. Anyways, so let's get the first video started.
Very few fitness influencers have
Whoa.
emphasized.
I don't want to react to that one just yet. Let's see this one first. YouTube's most degenerate parents. Turkey
Disclaimer. This video discusses some sensitive subjects. I do not endorse or support any of the actions shown. This is purely for documentary purposes. Thank you. Family vlogging is an inherently weird phenomenon. On the surface, it looks
weird.
harmless enough. Mothers and fathers showing off their lifestyle with their kids for everyone to see. What could be more harmless than family? But
I feel like that's not. I feel like as a teenager, as a child, like you don't necessarily want to have your life put on blast by your parents, and you don't want like your I remember myself as a teenager. I didn't necessarily want all my friends from school to know like what my life was like at home and how my relationship with my parents were. Like, you know, just to be honest, like sometimes you find your parents a little bit embarrassing when you're in that age range. So I feel like it's not really harmless. I feel like it kind of really disrupts your children's social life. Wait, is that Kaizen? Why does he look yellow? Oh, that's a different guy. Yeah, if you don't know Star Wars lore, the Trandoshans and the Wookiees are like generational. I don't even want to say rival species. Like they went to war with each other. I think the Trandoshans like enslaved them for a time being. So there's a lot of bad blood there. Anyways, Trandoshan's worthless even as bait.
Explain yourself, Wookiee.
Hey, 40 of them.
How did you know Kaizen's going through Shikoyagu? You're killing Trandoshans who are honored and respected. If word gets out, the ones who retaliate won't be sick. Your fellow Wookiees may not risk their lives and villages simply for your bloodlust.
Jedi truce, if you and your lizard agree. Sure.
Don't worry about us.
It's a Jedi way.
Wouldn't being captured by Guaro erase your score? A Trandoshan working with a Wookiee? That's unprecedented.
It's still standing over here, just observing.
Did you get any idea of where Venom might be from the Hollow?
Dosk tanga rastak. Shiverskarsuk. Gus. Zonkelis. Korra. Skocharat mask osla. Spetod tranis. Unda polua. Yorska pokret. Belsk. Drank. Ringhods ruk sar. Radosk Brakshakis. Vekoskus Zarsk. Parsk Bodrak.
Awesome, I flew all the way to this planet just so we could talk for a bit. Now we're gonna fly to a new planet. By the way, I just thought about this. I've never really thought to ask this question before. Is Kashyyyk in this game? I don't think it was in like the initial release of the game, but you know, via one of the expansion packs. I'm kind of curious. Here, let me look this up real fast. Kashyyyk. Not currently a fully explorable planet. I'm surprised it isn't. It is such a major planet in Star Wars lore at this point. Okay. Apparently you can visit the Shadowlands though, right? Is that true? Shadowlands SWTOR. The Shadowlands in Star Wars lore is like a part of, like, you have Kashyyyk, which is like a jungle planet, right? Massive, gigantic trees. The, like, what do you call it? Like the underbrush, the lower levels of the Kashyyyk forest is called the Shadowlands, where like it's so dense light doesn't reach it, and so you have like all these like crazy monstrous animals that live down there that the Kashyyyk hunt. So it should be really interesting. But I didn't know it was featured in this game. I'm not really seeing anything that looks like the Shadowlands, so I'm assuming that's not in this game. I think there is a stronghold that you could buy though, however. That is in the Shadowlands. You want to say something to the audience? Go ahead. No? Okay. On we go.
But what's often lost in translation is that kids are not supposed to be famous. They're not meant to have millions of followers before they're even old enough to drive. And they're definitely not meant to have pivotal moments of their development broadcasted to strangers online. With a format so inherently unethical, it's not a shock that moments in front of the camera are often only a fraction as bad as what happens when no one is watching. Today, we're discussing the most disturbing family vlog channels, starting with Ruby Frank, a mother who believed that her children were possessed by demons. In 2013, mother of
Did
six,
she really,
Ruby
or was she
Frank
doing that for
created
attention?
the YouTube channel 8 Passengers to document her family's life,
That
which was pretty
banner
eventful
looks
at the time.
creepy.
One of her
as
sons
is.
was about to turn 18 years old, while Ruby was about to have her 6th child, who appeared in one of her videos straight out of the womb. Partly due to the unusual amount of kids she had, her channel didn't take long to amass a sizable viewership,
like
peaking at over 40 million views a month. To put it simply, Ruby was at the absolute top of her genre, all from simply recording her enjoying her family life. But of course, this had to go wrong somehow. Fans of the content started picking up on some red flags. For example, sometimes
Oh, I'll be right back. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. I have such terrible allergies this time of the year. I have to like blow my nose, irritating the hell out of me. All right, let's keep this going.
Times after the kids clearly asked Ruby not to film them, she ignored their requests and continued anyway.
No.
Mother knows best.
Okay, so
Can you not film it?
Oh, I gotta see this.
Although she is their mother, viewers felt it was a violation of their privacy to record them against their will.
Yeah, I think
It
so.
became even more
There's just like this weird thing with like, how do you handle parents who do things that they're not like technically illegal things, but you just know that they're not really great for the children? It's kind of weird when you think about it that like we give parents like the ability to lord over their children's lives in ways that can damage them for a lifetime. You know what I mean? That are not technically illegal. And it's like, yeah, it's like you're impacting someone's life and there's like barely any regulation on it. Because like, how would you regulate that? How are you going to tell parents like, you know, you can't do X, Y, and Z thing?
You've hunted across this galaxy for years. Surely someone owes you a favor.
Brayden. Mako is one of the companion characters for the other class in this game, the Bounty Hunter. So it's kind of cool to see them cross-referenced. And to me, she owes debt. Then we should talk to her. Good, so she'll work for free.
What debt does she owe?
I think Brayden is dead, though, if I remember correctly.
more questionable when you factor in that it's been widely claimed that her comment sections were full of creeps posting suggestive timestamps for other creeps to then click. This isn't a unique thing for the 8 Passengers channel. In fact,
yeah,
it's
see, that's, I mean, that's the other
been
thing that I wasn't even thinking about, but like, yeah. I don't know. I don't have any kids, but as a parent, I would be really concerned about sharing photos of my children online for that reason.
widely documented across YouTube. Obviously, these
or at the
comments are
very
not-
least, like if you're going to share photos online on social media, like it would have to be a private account with only, you know, like friends and family that are, you know, able to see my posts like that.
her fault, and it's impossible to know if she was carrying out any efforts to try and suppress or delete them, so Ruby can't be blamed for this directly. What she can be blamed for, however, is the way she treated her kids. Beyond just recording them when they were clearly uncomfortable with it, in 2019, something happened that crossed the line for a lot of people. Her youngest kid, who was just 5 at the time, forgot to pack her lunch, and this is how Ruby dealt with it.
Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children. I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch. But I responded and just said Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch. So the natural
How old is Eve?
outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry.
Many people pointed out that one of the most common
Like, look, and this might be a little bit insensitive, but you know, your kid's not going to die if they skip lunch. You know what I mean? But also, it probably impacts their ability to perform well in school if they're hungry and they're not focused. And I just think it's weird because I feel like I've never met a parent that's like not concerned about their children always having like a meal, like 3 square meals and everything. It's all, most moms will like overreact about that. You know what I mean? So this lack of concern, I think, is kind of weird to me. It's a little sus.
forms of mistreatment is withholding food or using the threat of withholding food as a means of punishment. And this seemed to be a somewhat consistent pattern for Ruby in general.
I'm only gonna say it one more time, and then you're gonna lose the privilege
Hold on,
to
how
eat
old are
dinner.
kids?
Consequently, people dug up other questionable parenting techniques, like making her kids do push-ups as punishment. At one point, Ruby's eldest son, Chad, was sent to a boot camp.
Jeez. No offense or anything, but like, you know, I'm not gonna say it. This might be rude. Just, Chad is such a boring name, is it not? Can we find more interesting names? But that said, like, I think it's okay to make your kids do push-ups. Like, you have kids that participate in sports, right? They're gonna have to do push-ups. They'll have coaches that will sometimes, like, you know, force them to do push-ups almost like a punishment. Like, I don't know, like you guys were having unsportsmanlike conduct. I want you to give me 10 push-ups. I think as long as it's a reasonable amount, I don't think that's a huge issue necessarily. I think obviously if you're like forcing your kids into like physical strenuous activity that they're not able to handle, and it's like straining them physically, like past a certain degree, yeah, I could see that as like abusive. But I don't know, if your kid did something wrong and you're like, drop and give me 10 push-ups, is it really that big of a deal?
Camp called Anasazi, which allowed no electronics whatsoever. But why was he sent there? Well, I'll let her explain it.
I also don't think that's necessarily bad, but granted, in a vacuum, there's a larger pattern here of behavior that is kind of, you know, is red, like giving me red flags. So if it's just in isolation, like you had a problem child and they're like really like a huge issue, they're getting suspended from school and stuff like that, like I could see one of those camps where they have to go and they don't have access to their devices. It's almost like not a scared straight thing where like they try to scare the kids, but more so like we need to like really disconnect you from your bad influences for a few days or something, and then, you know, try to connect with you, see what's going on, maybe do some counseling and like try to like reset whatever's going, like that's fine. But knowing that she's constantly filming her children as like an influencer and then doesn't care that her daughter's like going to school hungry, it takes on a different character.
It's an accumulation of things over years, well before we ever started YouTubing or well before we ever got into social media. And it's reached a point where Chad needs to develop some very basic maturity and skills that he's going to need as an adult. And
This is a chance for like a reset, like a start over, like a do-over, like a fresh beginning.
yeah.
If you're confused, I think that's probably the point. It seems like their goal was to be as vague as possible about.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that it's very ambiguous. On its surface, that statement, you know, like I said, I basically made the same explanation for why a program like that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but again, because of the red flags and because they're so vague about it, it's kind of sus. And you know what, like, ordinarily you'd expect parents to be kind of vague about stuff like that, because most parents aren't sharing their children with the rest of the fucking world, right? But because they've already made that decision to be like influencers and have their kids all over their social media and stuff, when they're vague about this, when they're choosing to share it with their little influencer audience and they're being vague about it, it's weird.
It to avoid giving the audience something that they could judge not worthy of being sent to the wilderness. After Chad spent over 2 months there, the family reunited in an emotional vlog. But of course, staying in the wilderness for a while doesn't fix or change.
That's a lot of fucking time. The other thing about that too is, I feel like if I were to send a child to something like that, like I would have to be there to chaperone, because I wouldn't trust like a camp. I wouldn't trust my kids to be with like these adults for 2 months without supervision. You know, I mean, I don't want to assume the worst of every person or anything, but like at the same time, those are your kids. You have to kind of assume like the rest of the world is out to get them, so you can be as vigilant as possible. Like, it's like you're protecting a very precious thing. You can't just leave it up to chance.
Change who you are. He was probably just out there
Use the Noeticon terminal.
making fires and hunting squirrels, waiting for the moment he could go back to cranking 90s in Fortnite, or whatever it was he did that got his mom so mad that she sent him to Ted Kaczynski therapy. After Chad came back, it didn't take long for him to get in trouble again, this time for tricking his younger brother into packing for Disneyland, when in reality, they weren't going anywhere. There's a wide spectrum of old...
I mean, yeah, sometimes a prank like that can go too far, but I don't think that's that huge of a deal. I mean, that's just a regular part of anybody's upbringing, right? Is like your friends and your brothers and sisters and your cousins and stuff, like pranking each other and doing silly stuff like that. Not the biggest thing in the world. That's just kids being kids to a certain degree. Remember, by the way, the Noeticons are like these, like Jedi data cubes that have almost like an AI version of ancient Jedi who have like some knowledge that the Jedi of the current timeline that we're in right now don't necessarily have. So that's what we're trying to access here. If I remember correctly, I think the Noeticon terminal in the ancient ruins was destroyed, and so it looks like they made a replica version here, and it seems like it's not working. When you touch the fin, nothing happens. Please don't be broken. Hello? This is pointless.
Do you recognize me?
Oh, got life. There we go.
The vessel merely frees its contents. Your face is familiar.
Though life has written on you since we taught you the shielding technique.
Yes. Now I recall. I sensed the Sith were behind our sudden plunge into darkness.
A moment, Master Arca. Was the shielding technique successful? Did it save your master?
Yuan Par is alive and well because of the lessons you taught me.
That is most excellent news. Now, tell us what brought you here.
So, you seek an army to protect the Republic from its enemies. Quite a puzzle, even for us.
But not impossible, Master Tharis. The ancient Rakata boast in their writings of imprisoning a sleeping army.
Can you elaborate?
The translation? Oh, this is fascinating. Rakata imprisoned this army in stasis beneath the planet's surface.
But see, the writings are incomplete. There's no record of which planet it is.
Perhaps we could extrapolate the planet's position from the rest of the writings.
They speak of a fading nova in the night sky during the prison's construction.
In that time period? Then it's somewhere in the mid-rim. But we're missing a coordinate to pinpoint it.
See here. A monument proclaims our victory. And that's the Rakata term for Hoth. This monument on Hoth will have the last coordinate.
But go carefully. The Rakata protected their monuments from enemies and rebelling slaves. Its guardians may still be active.
Thank you for all you've done.
You've done a great service in reawakening us.
For now, we must conserve our energy. And you have an army to find.
May the Force be with you. And with the Republic.
I love the whole Rakata lore of the Old Republic. And if you're not familiar, the Rakata are basically like, they're kind of like, what would be like the precursor species. There's another term I feel like people use, right? Halo had like a similar thing. What are they called? It's not a precursor, it's... Yeah, well, whatever it is, you get what I mean. Like, they were like an ancient species that were like the dominant force in the galaxy prior to the rise of the Jedi or the Sith. And I think if I remember correctly, I think they taught the Sith like the dark side of the Force, basically. And the Rakata were massive assholes. Like they had like an intuitive connection, or like an inherent connection with the dark side of the Force. And they used it to enslave other races and have them like build technology and stuff. And they're like cannibals. They engaged in a lot of war. And even then, right, there's a lore that goes even further back than that. Like the Rakata learned their like hyperspace travel and stuff like that from races or species that were like more advanced than them, and then they basically betrayed that species and wound up subjugating them and wound up breeding them into like a shadow of their former self. Like let's bring this up actually. Let me show you what this looks like. Rakata and the... Who taught them? Is it the Gree? It's not the Gree, right? Not the Gree. There's another species that taught them like interplanetary travel and technology. Learned from... This is what their kata look like, by the way. There's something about their design, too, that just... I don't know what it is exactly, but it just conveys... like a primeval... evil. Primeval evil. I'm curious, like, there's something about the design, and I wouldn't know how to pinpoint it, that conveys that. I just think it's really interesting from a design standpoint. How do you make like an alien species specifically look both like highly intelligent, highly ruthless, and like with an evil, manipulative intent? Is it because their eyes are spread apart? I don't know. What is it specifically? Not sure. Okay. But yeah, the Rakata learned from... Who did they learn from? Infinite Empire, slaves... Oh, the Qua. So the Qua taught him, like, interplanetary travel and technology and stuff. And so the Qua looked like this. And I think that they were, for the most part, like, benevolent. And I think they were also force sensitive, if I remember correctly. But the Rakata managed to subjugate them and turn them into this. And now the Qua exist in the Old Republic as like a non-sentient animal. That's how evil the Rakata were. They took the species that taught them basically everything they know, and they subjugated them and turned their species into a primitive life form. That level of subjugation is crazy. Anyways, let's keep this going.
Older brother antics ranging from Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid all the way to Cain from the Bible. And although this is a pretty mean prank to pull on your brother, it's nothing that serious. Ruby, however, felt differently, and the punishment she dished out was taking away Chad's bed privileges for 7 months. Yeah, you heard that right. Bed privileges. It's honestly impressive how creative this woman is with her punishments.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
Your bedroom is...
I've been sleeping on Beanbag since October.
Beanbags where? Like in the living room?
This
So
situation, along with many other minor instances of similar behavior, set an entire community on TikTok ablaze, as they collected and shared every bit of evidence of Ruby Frank's abusive behavior on the platform, and it was getting a lot of traction. Videos surfaced of her threatening her kids with severe punishments, including threatening to behead a stuffed animal belonging to one of her very young daughters. All of this negative press was starting to look very bad.
I imagine that's pretty traumatizing for like
vlog channel,
you know,
like
very young child.
Ruby became nervous that her business was going to suffer
Master
from the
Jedi,
controversy.
I can't tell you how glad I am you've arrived. Welcome to Auric Base. What's left of it. I'm Lieutenant Laskin. Did Republic Command send you? Did they get my distress signal?
Also, imagine not only doing that to your child, but being so bold about it that you put it online for like thousands of people that follow you to see. The amount of like shamelessness of that behavior. Anyways, did the Republic Command send you? Did they get the distress signal? No one mentioned.
I don't think your signal got through. The station seemed pretty calm.
You don't know? If you're not here to answer my distress call, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't... An explosion in one of the speeder hangars knocked out main power. Within seconds, we were under heavy Imperial fire. Our shields haven't switched to auxiliary power yet.
Without the shields, you must have taken heavy casualties.
What you see here, Master Jedi, might be all that's left of the Republic presence in this area of Hoth. We still have men in the field on a critical mission, or we did when we were attacked anyway. Between the Imperials and the cold, I don't have enough people for a search party. Please, if you could head out there, you're their only chance.
What makes you think they haven't already frozen to death?
I know it's a long shot, but the mission they were on is vital. They were headed out to check the long-range sensors. With those running again, we'd have some warning before another attack hit. If you reach them, give them these, fresh weapons and supplies, and they might make it back. And thank you.
So once it got to a point where she could no longer afford to ignore it, the family did an interview with Business Insider to try and clear the air. They claimed that Child Protective Services had actually visited them over the complaints from social media. But when they got there, they found Ruby baking with her daughter and the rest of the home in perfect order. While leading with this anecdote, Ruby's strategy to dealing with people's accusations was to simply ignore all.
Child Protective Services has to be used to parents like pulling this strategy, right? That they clean up and they try to make everything look squeaky clean when CPS arrives. And they have to know, like, to a certain degree, like, this is a little bit too like manicured. Seems a little bit ingenuine.
Refusing to accept that she may have committed a single mistake in her treatment of her kids. Anyone saying otherwise was simply regarded as a disingenuous hater. It was just so malicious, she said. They knew what they were doing was out of context. They were purely seeking to throw hate. That was their only objective. Unsurprisingly, this interview did very little to curb the allegations. And with her reputation severely damaged, she slowed down her upload schedule. And this case...
It's also so strange to me, like, why Business Insider? Why does Business Insider even care about this story? It seems like such a weird mismatch to me.
Briefly lost a lot of its steam. That is, until...
Like, yeah, I'm gonna read about, like, the financials of, Pfizer, and then the next page, there's an expose on this random influencer on social media who's in trouble with CPS.
Mid-2020, when Ruby partnered with Jody Hildebrand, who used to be the family's therapist. They started a new project that apparently aimed to be a support group for mothers, giving them advice and helping them, quote, treat those lost in the darkness of a distortion. People who saw this were naturally confused as to what this was even supposed to mean, and why the 8 Passengers brand had taken such a hard turn into some kind of weird parenting advice and therapy brand. Within months of this partnership with Jody, Ruby's entire life was turned upside down, completely reorganized around this new project, titled Connections, which people appropriately pointed out sounded a lot like a cult. Ruby's online presence was renamed to Moms of Truth and completely rebranded to promote this new project.
Let me tell you the truth. This world where there are games and there is distortion and there is lust and there are people...
What era was this? This reminds me of like the trad wife kind of trend that's been going on lately.
To hurt others. That's not the real world. That is the delusional world. And we have so many people living in the delusional world and so few people living in the truth that it looks like the distorted world is the real world. It looks that way. And the few people who are living in truth, they look like Looney Tunes.
You know, initially, you could assume that Ruby had at least learned a little bit from her previous controversy, as she began sharing a lot less about her personal life. Unfortunately, it turns out that this wasn't the result of Ruby suddenly having an epiphany and discovering that exposing her family constantly wasn't good for them. This was Ruby keeping her increasingly erratic and bizarre behavior off camera, so that she wouldn't get in trouble for it. In 2022, Jody moved in with Ruby, and according to the kids' testimonies, Jody slowly brainwashed Ruby into becoming more and more vile. She even pitted her
Jody is the therapist
against her husband, Kevin, who was forced to abide by the
That is super, super weird and super inappropriate for your therapist to be that involved with your personal life. Obviously, the impression I get is like her therapist is just opportunistically, you know, seeing like a business opportunity to get in with this influencer and make money that way and kind of live like a reality TV lifestyle. But obviously it's like super unethical.
insane requirements just so he could still see the kids. Of course, this was just a tactic with the intention of pushing Kevin out of their life, so they could do whatever they wanted to the kids with no pushback. Ruby began leaving them at the house without supervision for several days at a time. She covered the windows with newspapers so no one could see what was going on inside, and she forced them to perform physical.
How ghetto, by the way. Like, you're making all this money and you cover your windows. You can't even get, like, I don't know, like those shaded blinds or something, or like a tinted film to put over the windows. Like, you're literally putting newspaper. And I imagine this couple, they probably live in like a more waspy neighborhood.
Physical labor, sometimes having them work outside for hours without food and water in over 100-degree weather.
Jeez.
The kids were being isolated and malnourished, and being fed the bare minimum to keep them alive. Before this moment, some could argue that even if Ruby...
I wonder though, like, and maybe even asking this question, like, I wonder if this lady has like some kind of psychological disorder or something. But at some point when you see behavior like this, it's also kind of like, how can you not have some kind of disorder in order to behave this way?
She was a bad mom. She wasn't necessarily abusive, but now there was simply no denying it. In May of 2023, Ruby and Jody relocated the family to Jody's house in Ivins, Utah, which no one, including her own husband Kevin, had any knowledge of. From there, the mistreatment continued until the including
that's
her
a
own
fancy house. Holy crap. So it's kind of interesting too, because this looks like it's out in the boonies. It is interesting that it's like, usually when I see people with like mansions like this out in the boonies, I kind of feel like it's almost like a custom designed, ordered kind of thing. But it's almost like a development with multiple homes. That's a weird scenario.
Husband Kevin had any knowledge of. From there, the mistreatment continued.
I can't handle the desert, by the way, either. If I had that much money to like build a dream home, I definitely wouldn't put it in the middle of the desert. Desert's cool to visit and everything, but shit's too hot, it's too barren.
Until the 30th of August, when Russell, the second youngest, managed to escape the house via an open window, running to one of the neighbors
Jesus
to beg
Christ,
for food
dude.
and water. The neighbor
Holy
immediately
crap.
noticed that Russell had tape around his ankles, looked emaciated, and had open wounds, so he called the police.
This escalated really quickly.
I had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Is your door locked?
No, I'm sitting outside with him on the front patio.
Once the police got there, they discovered the horrific living conditions the kids were in, prompting Child Protective Services to immediately take them away. They also promptly arrested the two women, who were immediately charged for their crimes. Following Ruby's arrest, her own sisters took to Instagram saying that it needed to happen. Meanwhile, one of her daughters, Sherry, also posted celebrating her own mother's arrest. She had already moved out long before the court case, and previously had tried to alert the police to her mother's antics, calling a wellness check on the family when she had heard that her siblings had been left in the...
Maybe I missed this, but how did they manage to separate the children from the father in the first place? That seems kind of weird to me, right? For like this parent to be so abusive to her kids and her father to just kind of let it happen, I guess? Like, let her take full custody and move the kids across the country? Like, what? I might have missed something there.
House by themselves for 5 days, but unfortunately nothing came of it. About a week after she was arrested, the 8 Passengers channel was banned from YouTube, and the rest of the related online presence was slowly shut down as other social media companies became aware of the issue. During the trial itself, Ruby went out of her way to make herself out to be even more condemnable, accusing her own son, Russell, of violating his sisters, claiming he had admitted it to her. Of course, there was no proof of this, and this is undoubtedly something she fabricated during the trial to distract them from her own misdeeds. What they did have proof of was Ruby referring to her kids as the spawn of Satan. This phrase came from her diary, in which she admitted to refusing to feed the, quote, demons, shaving
What the hell, dude? To think of your own kids in that way? That's wild. I don't actually remember this mission. I played this storyline before in a different character, but I don't remember this part. It's kind of cool, though.
her son's head as a punishment, making her daughter stand in the rain for hours, and dousing her with water they used to wash the dog. All of this was in an effort to break the deal with the devil she believed they had made. In the end, Ruby took a deal, pleading guilty to 4 counts to prevent herself from being convicted of 6 and being sentenced to up to 30 years in prison. Thanks to her pleading down, this means she'll be free in a year or 2. And you really gotta wonder if she abandoned her delusions while in prison, or if she's only gotten more insane and still thinks she did the right thing. The story of 8 Passengers is one where the most insidious behavior was ultimately occurring away from the camera. This is not the case with Mike Martin. Daddy05 was a YouTube channel run by Mike and Heather Martin, a couple hailing from Baltimore, Maryland. They came to prominence in early 2017 for videos depicting what the parents called pranks on their 5 children.
Okay, hold on, I gotta see what this looks like. Okay, seemingly normal family otherwise.
Alex. Partly, the attention they got came from just how bizarre the videos were, even by family channel standards. Dad's strange addiction exposed.
Pranking your kids here and there is like probably fun for the family and everything. Making your whole like YouTube channel about constantly pranking your kids seems really fucking annoying, and also again an invasion of their privacy to have them so prominently
Dad
featured.
Punches kid in the face. Hey, this looks like that one album. Cody holds Alex at gunpoint. Is Jake gay? Among many other absolutely deranged uploads. Prime Daddy05 content was like a Lifetime TV show from hell, and it really sold the Martin family's household as this Guy Fieri Mountain
reality
Dew
TV era of media, like in the 2000s, whatever, just done so much irreparable damage to our culture. Especially the people who want to like model their lives off of that and have that same kind of fame.
The Rakata left you behind when their civilization fell.
By definition.
Who or what are the Eshka?
Maybe I should read this too. Especially you guys might not be able to see the wording. So this guy's claiming he's a Rakata, some kind of Rakata AI recording, that they needed to fight back against this species called the Eshka, who, according to them, were hostile. The thing is, though, with the Rakata, they're highly manipulative, so you have to take everything they say with a grain of salt. Probably a good chance that the Eshka were not the aggressors in the scenario, and that this is the narrative that they spin to justify what they did. So the Eshka were crushed, conquered, humbled. Their entire species was sealed in stasis, awake to think on their actions. I think the Ricotta used this technology where they would keep like force-sensitive beings alive in like some stasis machine in order to power their hyperspace technology. I have a feeling that's what he's referring to, but he's trying to spin it as something else.
That's absolutely terrible.
Eshka must be great hunters, only lack leadership, Harold. These stars point to the prison of the Eshka, so all can marvel at the Builder's achievement. The Builders is them, by the way, it's the Ricotta. Instruction ends, I am now free to mentally condition more slaves for the Builders. All who access me will serve. I'm gonna lie to him. The Ricotta say not to. Let's see what his response
your master
is.
sent orders. They've got plenty of slaves already.
Deviants. Slaves do not speak for the Builders. Basically, the Ricotta are going to consider everybody who's not Ricotta to be slaves, by the way. You're at risk? I'll stop this? What does she mean by you're at risk? I'm not really
The
sure.
Infinite Empire's cruelty will not begin again.
Deviants. Report to your overseer for execution, slave. What am I attacking? This statue? I guess.
Torture chamber. However, that was just the superficial appearance of the channel, as beyond the clickbaity titles and thumbnails, it was clear that a lot of the content was exaggerated, and outside of content creation, the Martins were a decently normal family. That is, until you paid attention to how Mike treated two of his kids, Cody and Emma. You see, Cody and Emma aren't Heather Martin's kids. Instead, they come from Mike's ex-wife, Rose Hall. Coincidentally, they seem to be the main targets of the channel's pranks, and they were targeted much more aggressively than Mike's other kids. Dad burns Cody.
That's always pretty gross too when you have family dynamics like that, where you have like stepchildren or adopted children. Usually it's the other way around, where like the parent who's the step parent will not treat the stepchild, you know, the same as the other children, because it's like, oh, that's not my child, or that child reminds me of my partner's ex-partner. This is a little bit unusual because it sounds like this guy, like these are his children from a previous relationship, and it sounds like he treats them like they're not, or he doesn't treat them with the same, I guess, consideration that he treats the other kids.
Cody's Pokemon cards had well over 1 million views. Dad destroys son's DS. Cody ruins a giant family surprise. Cody gets the belt. I'm sending Cody to military school.
Using Cody for target practice.
You get the point. I know that YouTube back then was a different time, but I'm honestly shocked this channel was even able to operate for as long as it did with those titles in mind. In one particular case, Heather doused Cody's bedroom floor in ink, and then started yelling at him, accusing him of being the culprit, until he started desperately crying and turning red, only for Heather to reveal it was all just a prank.
He just picked it up off the floor! Do you know how much that's gonna cost to clean?
We got you both. You were innocent bystander.
Yeah. You just got owned. It's just a prank, bruh.
So immature.
Other supposedly fun pranks included Mike pushing Cody into a bookshelf and having Ryan, one of the older sons, slap Emma in the face whenever she failed to do a bottle flip challenge, which resulted in her crying and being in visible pain. While the mistreatment was more hands-on when it came to Cody, Mike tended to outsource Emma's mistreatment to Ryan or his other kids, turning them against one another.
That's not cool too, because then it creates like a hierarchy dynamic.
Documenting the aftermath for entertainment. I will concede that
which,
plenty
like,
of the videos played
probably
out
pretty,
like they had been scripted.
Pretty damaging to the other kids too. You might not think so, because like the other kids are, you know, on top of that hierarchy, being the ones who are like bullying the other kids. But you have to like think that that's going to psychologically impact the way that those kids like socialize with other kids and whatnot, and you know, might present itself in, I mean, I'm no child development person, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, but I imagine it might present itself in like those kids engaging in antisocial behavior outside the home, or even like they may not be comfortable with that behavior, but they're just doing it because their parents are kind of like telling them and pushing them into doing that sort of thing.
scripted beforehand, but even if any of this stuff was agreed on before filming, you gotta remember that these are kids, so them agreeing doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, it's
They
coercive.
aren't eligible to consent to being yelled at and terrorized on camera for content. On top of that, you'd have to look really hard to find any kid who can act well enough to look so believably traumatized and hurt as Cody does in these videos.
Look at me. Say, I'm the best dad ever.
You're the best dad ever!
I know, but you still can't have your games, Cody. You don't have to try to flatter me.
Play with my friend!
The invisible ink prank in particular drew a lot of hatred from the broader internet, and so in response, Mike created a new video wherein, to disprove the allegations that he was...
Yeah, you know what? I didn't really get a close-up look of the dad in that first like family picture or whatever, but he just looks immature. He looks like he hasn't grown up himself. Like he has like high school boy energy. They just do stupid things and like haze each other. Doesn't look like he's grown up himself.
As a terrible father, he asked his kids if they had been traumatized.
Apparently, it's upsetting a lot of people. This video, I mean,
It's just a prank, bro. Was anybody traumatized?
No!
That's stupid. I hate when people do that kind of thing. Like, what are these glasses about? No offense, but when you put people on the spot like that, that's like, it's like you're basically like socially pressuring them to just agree with you, especially your kids. Your kids of all people aren't gonna like disagree with you when you put them on the spot like that.
I don't even know what that word means, but yes, no, I was.
It's like asking a loaded question.
Are you guys okay?
I don't mean to make light of this situation because this is honestly pretty dark, but the idea of someone abusing their kids on camera, being called out for it, and then sticking the same camera into the same kid's face and asking them, "Are you traumatized?" is so nonsensical.
Are you
It
offended,
should be
bro?
a Smiling Friends bit or something. Instead, it's just real life. While there were plenty of people on Reddit and other platforms commenting on how low and terrible Daddy05's content was, it wasn't until Philip DeFranco made a video about it that the ball really got rolling.
If we look past the screaming and cursing at the kids, there's also the physical element. Not just between some of the kids, which people would say, oh, you know, that's just families. In a video they called Tablet Destruction Prank, at one point the dad pushes Cody. That sends him face first into a bookshelf. And then we see later in the video his pillow is the dad pushes Cody. That sends him face first into a bookshelf. And then we see later in the video his pillow is covered with blood.
Phil is one of the oldest news channels on YouTube, and at the time, he had a lot of sway in what was being talked about by the commentary community at large. So him putting a spotlight on the issue really drew a lot more eyes to it. In his video, he shows that Mike's response didn't do a very good job of dispelling the criticism. So Mike had tried to plug a hole in his ship with a new written apology. We have had a family meeting and reviewed many comments and concerns. We discussed different alternatives for our future videos and ways we can improve. We deeply apologize.
Deeply apologize for your feelings of concern. We do not condone child abuse in any way, shape, or form. As many of our friends and family would tell you, we are a loving, close-knit family and all enjoy making YouTube videos and having fun together. As many of our friends and family would tell you, hey mom, I'm not an abusive father, am I? See, my mom says that I'm a good boy.
For your feelings of concern. We do
My
not
friends say that I'm a
condone
good
these
guy.
alleged crimes
They're
in any
impartial
way, shape,
observers.
or form. As many of our friends and family would tell you, we are a loving...
But my Senate clearance got us some answers. It's a world called Belsavis.
And the Ashka won't be lonely. The Republic's using Belsavis as a high-security prison.
They're in for a shock. Okay, interesting. So Belsavis is like this prison planet operated by the Republic. I didn't realize that. It sounds like the Rakata have some presence there at some point in time. Okay.
I can still seek out the Eshka without causing a stir.
Okay, so I'm curious. Maybe the Eshkar are dangerous, right? Because it sounds like the Republic is still keeping them locked up, but probably more to the story than people are aware of.
Maybe the Eshka who oppose this galactic cleansing can persuade the others.
We should seek out these Eshka with all haste. I think they've been imprisoned long enough.
What, for like millennia, though? Okay.
Close-knit family and all enjoy making YouTube videos and having fun together. You can immediately pick up on this non-apology by the way it's phrased. We deeply
I'm sorry that
apologize
you're
for
offended.
your feelings of concern. At no point is there any admission of wrongdoing, despite the dozens upon dozens of terrible clips of Mike. People were mad, and rightfully so this topic just kept getting bigger and bigger. So naturally, Mike and his wife went to the one place where everyone went to sort out their grievances at that time, Drama Alert. For the unfamiliar, Drama Alert was a YouTube news show hosted by
Keemstar. I always hear his name pop up everywhere. I don't think I've ever seen
Republic
Keemstar.
says we can't land until they confirm Father's clearance.
It's all right, Nadia. Belsavis is their prison. They make the rules.
So, if the Noeticons are right, Eshka, our sleeping army, was shut away.
As Orien Ember Akiminta.
Some Eshkar were peaceful. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's possible that Eshkar were also assholes as well. So, but it sounds like not all of them were that way.
Oppose the genocide. Perhaps they can persuade the others.
By these coordinates, the Republic prison is practically on top of the Rakata facility.
Seems awfully hazardous. Unless they don't know the Rakata facility is there.
But the Republic does know this planet. Perhaps someone could point us in the right direction.
No one mentioned the Eshkar. I'm a little bit confused here because I'm wondering here: does the Republic actually know about the Eshkar? Are the Eshkar locked away in Belsavis and the Republic doesn't know about them? I don't know why we're assuming that the Rakata were telling us the truth, basically. Well, I guess from the characters' perspectives, they don't know what I know about the Rakata, I guess.
I'm not sure it's wise to discuss such matters.
Finally! Jedi, someone down there wants to talk to you.
Hello, this is Assistant Comey. No, they're still securing that block. We're dealing with a major breakout and rioting, Senate clearance or not. We can't help you.
I'm a Jedi Master, and I'm seeking something left behind on Belsavis, maybe centuries ago.
But we don't really have... Are you talking about the vaults? The prison started out maintaining the old vaults on the surface. When the Empire began blowing doors open, the riots started. What? Try the secondary code. I think you need my boss, Commander Gielan. He studies those vaults as a hobby.
I appreciate your time. It sounds like anarchy down there.
Let me find Commander Gielan for you. He's... Oh, blast. We still don't have our locator towers. Those locators track our ID cards, but they shut down after the first power cut. I can't find the commander until they're reset. And the prisoners around those towers are killing anyone who tries to fix them.
I'll handle it.
We'd appreciate it. When you reach the towers, just flip a switch. Once the towers are up, I can find Commander Gielan, then we... Oh, sorry, gotta go. Thank you!
Okay, so what I'm assuming is that the Republic probably took over this planet and probably built on top of it. They know that these vaults seal away, like, dangerous, powerful species. But they probably don't really know why the Rakata did that in the first place. Or even, I mean, they may not even know that the Rakata were involved in it. And all they know is that if they open up those vaults, they get attacked. But it's possible that the prisoners that are in there are, like, imprisoned for bad reasons. But they might have been imprisoned for, like, decades or centuries. And so it's natural that they'd have the response of, like, we're trying to break free and free ourselves from what to them would look like people that are keeping us in prison. So probably a bit of a misunderstanding, I imagine.
And he's managed to be involved in almost every single YouTube drama that has taken place over the last 15 years or so. During this interview, Mike and Heather did successfully convince Keemstar of their immediate innocence. They argued that their videos were mostly staged, and in actuality, the kids were all having fun the entire time.
Are these videos 100% real? I mean, is it 100% real, or are you guys putting on a show like McJuggernuggets or Kid Behind the Camera?
McJuggernuggets.
They are a little exaggerated.
I mean,
A
this
little.
was their idea to start with, so when
This
they
is
find
their
out
idea.
Going, they go with it. And
Blame your children,
sometimes
okay.
they'll tell us afterwards, we really didn't buy that. We knew all along, and then other times they're really pranked. I mean, it just, we never know what we're going to get.
But just one day later, Keemstar completely switched his position on the controversy, explaining to people what changed his mind.
But when I saw the clip today where the dad was having them do the bottle flip, and if you didn't flip the bottle, you got slapped in the face, and the brother slapped the girl, you can't justify that no matter what.
Mike became desperate and started doing whatever he could to try and pick up the pieces, including a very rushed attempt at an apology.
We just did an interview with Drama Alert. In the video, he asked me if the videos were real. I tiptoed around it because I was scared. But now I don't care anymore. The videos are fake. They're fake. Right now, we are under severe attack by this Franco.
Sometimes you can tell people are lying when they constantly change their story. So the first alibi was like, oh, the videos are real, but it's, you know, exaggerated. It's all part of the act too. Actually, guys, it was all fake all along.
Guy made a video about us, just steamrolling us. He never contacted me or anything. He never asked
me about Keemstar? Keemstar seems like he was pretty diplomatic in the interview.
He never tried to interview me. He never researched nothing. He watched a few videos and boom.
And because of that video, we now have real danger coming our way.
This guy put us in huge danger. He put my kids and family in huge danger over fake videos.
I don't know how this looks to you guys, but to me, it seems like really terrible acting. As I said before, although he's not outright lying that most of the videos are, to some degree, staged, it doesn't really exonerate him, since even if the videos are fake, the effects they have on the kids are real. To top it off, and to earn him even more negative attention, he's clearly blaming Philip DeFranco for reporting on it, as if Phil had somehow lied or doctored footage to incriminate him, and didn't just show his audience the content exactly as it had been originally presented. When he realized how bad this made him look, he took the entire video down. And a little while later, the couple made a second, much more polished video, probably under the guidance of some PR company, to try and redeem their brand. It's better than the other apology for sure, but it still didn't do anything to change their fate. After the topic was extensively picked up by a bunch of major outlets, it was covered by Nerd City, who probably did the most comprehensive video on the Daddy05 channel. And there was simply no excuse
Business Insider this time.
Staged that came close to justifying them. By early May of 2017, Mike had already lost custody of Cody and Emma to their biological mother, which was a big enough development that it was covered by conventional news outlets like ABC. From that point onward,
that's kind of a good question. Like, where was the biological mom during this entire time? Did they have joint custody? Were the kids spending like half the time with him, half the time with her, or was she just like not really in the picture?
the book had basically closed on the Daddy05 story, as Mike's attempts to make new channels to continue making content, first as Family05, then as Martin Family and Martin Boys, all got immediately banned by YouTube. Additionally, the loss of custody came with a criminal conviction, which was met with a parole sentence that Mike was no longer to upload any videos including Emma or Cody. Technically, he may have broken this condition a few times in his attempts to restart his channels, but it seems that no legal punishment was ever given out. Actually, in 2019, he even had his sentence reduced. Still, even if it came to an end, at this point, there was no way for them to return to their former glory, if we can even use that word. However, there was one way around it. Their eldest son, Jake Martin. All the way back when the original Daddy05 channel was still up, Jake already had his own channel with very similar videos, although over time, he began developing his content in different directions. Under the name Baby Dawn, he began posting edgy rap songs, which actually got a pretty positive reception from his audience. His next move was to try streaming on Kick, which also had some interesting results.
How cringe the middle-aged dad rap trend. Have you ever guys seen some of these rappers that try to make like a career when they're in like their middle age? Obviously they're not super great or anything, but it's just kind of like edgy and cringe. I'm not gonna be able to look them up. I know I don't even know what to search for or anything, but
so when that BBC is just
keeping your anus, it's like something about it, like it's rewarding.
In June of 2025, he even made a video with Cody and Emma as a sort of family reunion, which...
Oh wait, do I have this flipped around? Are they talking about the son grew up and he became like a streaming rapper? Or, hold on.
By conventional news outlets like ABC. attempts to make new channels to continue making content, first as Family05, then as Martin Family and Martin Boys, all got immediately banned by YouTube. Additionally, the loss of custody came with a criminal conviction, which was met with a parole sentence that Mike was no longer to upload any videos including Emma or Cody. Technically, he may have broken this condition a few times in his attempts to restart his channels, but it seems that no legal punishment was ever given out. Actually, in 2019, he even had his sentence reduced. Still, even if it came to an end, at this point, there was no way for them to return to their former glory, if we can even use that word. However, there was one way around it. Their eldest son, Jake Martin. All the way back when the original Daddy05 channel was still up, Jake already had his own channel with very similar videos. Although over time, he began developing his content in different directions. Under the name Baby Dawn, he began posting edgy rap songs, which actually got a pretty positive reception from his audience. His next move was to try streaming on...
I mean, I will say this, I don't know how the music is at all. I'm not gonna prejudge or anything, but kind of edgy, right? But like from a cinematography standpoint, like color grading looks pretty decent. You got like a little bit of a like the camera kind of panning slowly. Like it seems decently well produced from an amateur kind of thing.
Got a pretty positive reception from his audience. His next move was to try streaming on Kick, which also had some interesting results.
So when that BBC is just...
Speaking of which, what are you guys up to this weekend? I am fairly excited because I'm going to go to this Red Bull Racing event. It's like an expo. It's not really like a race. They're just kind of showing off like the Formula One car. And I think, what is it, like the Dakar rally truck car as well. Probably gonna do like a few stunts and everything. But also, my camera's been in the repair shop. Finally getting it back. I haven't been able to use it for a while. And the last couple race events I've gone to, because I like to be involved in motorsport, trying to get more into it. The last couple ones I've been to, I like to do photography, and I haven't been able to use my camera to capture, like my camera, not just my phone camera, but my camera to actually capture some of those events. So, kind of kill two birds with one stone there. I'm looking forward to it.
Anus, it's like something about it, like just make it rewarding.
In June of 2025, he even made a video with Cody and Emma as a sort of family reunion, which was received positively by his immediate audience. Because Jake was Mike's son, he didn't carry the same heat, so he was free to try and redeem the Daddy05 style content without any of the baggage. He even used this small resurgence in relevance to try and clear his dad's name on live TV.
A lot of them were improvised, but the majority of them were scripted, yes.
But it looks like a lot of the emotions that came out were pretty genuine.
Some of the emotions could have been getting so far into improvising the videos, honestly, because it's happened to me. And when you're filming a 40-minute to hour-long video and it's a bunch of siblings, I definitely think things would get hectic sometimes.
By making videos with Cody and Emma and publicly speaking out on behalf of his dad, Jake made some serious headway in convincing a lot of people that the videos weren't as bad as they had looked. And in photos of the family's reunion, it really seemed like everything was going well. Unfortunately for them, this narrative fell apart pretty quickly in late 2025 to early 2026 as a sequence of bizarre events took place in quick succession. First, Jake made a two-part video, the first half of which features him interviewing his brother, Alex. While this part is pretty benign, in the second half of the video, Jake begins making accusations about Cody. His reason for making these claims is supposedly that Cody had posted to his own Discord server saying that he still hates the Martins. This prompted Jake to say that during their meetup in the park that day, Cody inadvertently exposed himself to a number of children.
He whipped out his and pissed at a public playground next to a bunch of kids.
He then proceeds to detail Cody's general emotional instability during the reunion and says that Cody and Emma had only reached out to Mike after years of...
I mean, this is possibly true, right? Because keep in mind, like, these are kids who were raised by like an abusive parent, and they had like a very unusual upbringing. So, I mean, it's possible that they engage in, you know, antisocial behavior themselves due to some of the effects of that. Hold on a second. Imagine exploiting your children for internet fame. Wouldn't that be crazy?
of not contacting him because their child support finally ran out. Now, it's impossible to know how true any of this is, and to be totally honest, the details are less important than what this tells us about this family. Somehow, after years of not even being near each other, Jake and Cody are now once again fighting some surrogate war on behalf of their parents, with Jake taking his father's side. If it's true that Cody exposed himself in a public park, then he absolutely has issues. But then again, I have to wonder if his lack of boundaries and general social dysfunction has something to do with him being filmed against his will and mistreated on camera at such a young age. Whatever the case is, Jake's narrative began to completely disintegrate, as in late December 2025, he himself was arrested after being accused of assaulting someone during a neighborhood basketball game, which apparently put the other person in the hospital. The most recent video uploaded to Jake's channel, which is now privated, appeared to show a series of texts informing his audience of what happened and asking for money to help with his legal case. Clearly, there's no better way to prove that Mike had a terrible effect on his kids' lives than simply looking at how they're ending up. Even with the various claims they've made about each other, or Jake's current legal case, the fact that they see it as normal to air out family drama online for everyone to see is a clear sign of their development being stunted years ago. Mike Martin, meanwhile, still has a pretty active social media presence, using his TikTok account to promote his career making coworker music.
Oh, I think that's actually the term, right? It's like coworker rap or something like that. I might be wrong about that.
As bad as Mike Martin and Daddy05 were, at their peak, they had about
Daddy-O5.
700,000 subscribers, a number that,
Well, I want to
while
look this
very
up.
big,
I'm curious. Is this actually what it's called? Coworker music? Coworker music. I'm just inferring that the idea behind this is like, this is the kind of stuff that your coworkers show you, and you look at them and you're like listening to it and you really want them to stop, but you're just like, yeah, that was cool, man. That was interesting. Coworker music refers to mainstream, highly accessible, often safe music. Okay, I was totally wrong. Frequently played in shared work environments or by colleagues, including artists like Imagine. Okay. Coworker music is basically, I used to work at a hospital, and when we were at the nurse's station, it would get kind of boring, I guess. I guess that's every job where you work in an office or something. Actually, my coworkers were pretty funny. They were entertaining, but you know, it's nice to have music in the background. And because you're in like a hospital environment, it's a very professional environment, very public facing. There was really only one channel that we could play when we worked there. And the annoying thing is that it would play the same like dozen songs on repeat all day. And mind you, I'm there for like 8 hours, sometimes a little bit more than that. And so I'd hear like the same song like 5 or 6 times, probably more than that in a day. It got really tiring. And I don't necessarily hate all that music. It's very poppy, but it is that kind of music. Like, it's very safe, very like a lot of pop music, a lot of like soft rock kind of stuff. Not a lot of rap. Yeah, I guess because a lot of rap music kind of has themes that wouldn't really be work appropriate, but
in comparison to perhaps the most famous family on all of YouTube. When former college basketball player Austin McBroom and former model Catherine Pies began their relationship, they decided to start documenting their lives online, leading to the creation of the Ace Family channel in January of 2016. As the channel grew, it allowed their audience to look into moments as meaningful as the birth of their 3 kids, Ellie, Alea, and Steele McBroom. Due to how obscenely rich they became, this was basically YouTube's version of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where people wanted to vicariously take part in
people trying to be
and
reality
all of the
TV
drama
stars
that came with it.
All right, family. It is currently 8:21 p.m. October 15th, and we just got out of the shower. I literally just put some clothes on. Catherine, as you can tell, she just got out of the shower. She just threw some clothes on. As soon as she threw some clothes on, she was having some serious contractions.
Their first bits of
okay. Now I will say this, like they have the look for it. Like they're very photogenic, very like clean look and everything. So I mean, there is that.
Controversy are mostly insignificant, such as Austin playing one-on-one against Chris Brown, a man you might know for his hit songs like
I was about to say, like, this doesn't look so bad, but obviously they're in this video for a reason, so we're gonna see how this goes downhill.
Look at Me Now and These Hoes Ain't Loyal, and for viciously beating Rihanna 15 years ago. The one other controversy was just people on Twitter
The board just lit up. We can track our teams, control the perimeter, everything. Thank you.
It's called access control. I used to work in an engineering firm. Actually, 2 of my previous jobs both touched on this kind of work where I would set up, like, in the plans where your access control devices are, and then you kind of like build out like the controller and everything, and making sure like the circuits have enough power supplied to them, whatnot. I don't know, just a random tidbit. The board is lit up. We track our teams, control the perimeter, everything. Thank you.
Any Jedi would have been eager to help.
Now, you're asking about Belsavis's history. Let me see, Commander Geeland is here, with his team in one of the cells. He can tell you about the vaults or whatever you need.
May the Force be with you.
I'll put a holocall through
Also
that
with you.
cell so Commander Geeland knows you're coming. Now you've restored the locators, we just might survive. Please stay safe.
Now that I'm thinking about that, an interesting thing about like access control, I don't know if this would this fall under access control or would it be security? There's like related systems, but they are technically like slightly different systems, different services. But like you have motion sensors, right, for like security systems, and even if like your home cameras, I have some home like cameras that some people pay like way too much money for. What is it, like Ring or like those different companies that sell you like home surveillance equipment? It's like way too expensive. You can get cheaper equipment, you can install it yourself. It's usually not super hard. But anyways, so mine will have like motion detectors in them, and like they'll start recording when they detect motion. It's PIR, right? What does PIR stand for? I think it's infrared at the end, and then what is the P for? PIR detector. But one of the interesting things about it, right, because the way this works is pretty simple to understand. You got like something that's shooting out infrared signals. It's expecting like a certain interval of time for that signal to travel, bounce off of whatever, and then come back. If there's somebody walking past it, then that's going to have a different time delay than it's expecting. And then it's gonna, start recording or whatever. But there's PIR sensors with technology that will like ignore pets. And I always thought that was kind of interesting because I never really had the time to like look into it, but I was just wondering like, how does it know that? I'm imagining it has to do with like the size, or like, you could see that in the way that a lot of these are set up, you're gonna have beams kind of shooting out at multiple angles. And I thought to myself, like, maybe what's going on here is it's trying to see, like, if it's low to the ground, basically, then it's not likely to be, like, a burglar or something. But I just feel like that's unreliable, right? Because maybe I've watched too many movies, but I just imagine a scenario in my mind of, like, somebody going Mission Impossible mode and they're crawling on the ground like Solid Snake. But that's probably, realistically, people are probably not doing that when they break into a home. PIR detector... Animal or pet detection. Pet detection technology. Kind of cute too, because when I had it set up in my old unit, this is when I first got my cat would trigger it, and while I was at work, I had the app and I can look at it and kind of see what she was up to throughout the day. It's kind of nice. Okay, how does this technology work? With pet immunity. Use specialized lens technology, dual beam, or microprocessor signal analysis to distinguish between human intruders and animals, typically allowing pets up to 40 to 80 pounds to roam freely. These sensors ignore infrared energy signatures near the floor. Okay, so it works the way that I thought it would. And it require both beams to be triggered, significantly reducing false alarms. Dual beam technology. The detector splits its field of view, typically requiring both upper human height and lower pet height beams to be broken simultaneously to trigger alarm. I wonder why. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, why does it want both to be triggered? Because like, what if you only have that upper range triggered? Why would you not just assume that it's a human, right? I'm thinking maybe the reason for that is maybe you don't want it to pick up like a bird and then get triggered constantly by birds flying by. So the idea is like you want it to trigger from something that's in the upper range of height, but also like Something that has legs basically connected to the ground. Targeting infrared signatures. These sensors analyze the size of the heat source. Oh, I didn't think about that. Infrared. A small pet generates a smaller, lower infrared signature than an adult human. Advanced algorithms. In other words, AI. It's kind of funny because like we think about AI as like a recent technology, but the reality is that the AI that we have now is just a different kind or more advanced version of AI that's been around for quite a long time now. Like pretty much anything that has an algorithm is AI to a certain degree. Digital signal processing compares detection motion against a library of valid intruder signatures to filter out animals. I'm assuming what they mean by this is it probably compares to like the normal like gait and walking profile. So like a human being is going to walk, like they're going to walk faster than like a cat that just does like it's like slow moving, just kind of trawling motion or whatever. I'm assuming that's what they mean by that. Anyways, bit of a tangent, but I always think it's interesting to learn new things. So, all right, we got a question in chat. Paula, hello, I have a question for you. Do you think Keanu Reeves would play a great Darth Revan? So yeah, this comes up a lot in like the Star Wars community. Keanu Reeves is like, he matches the look for sure. So like, let's look up Darth Revan. Obviously you have like the canonical Darth Revan, because Darth Revan, you could choose the way he looks. Like he's a self-insert player character. Darth Revan, canon appearance. So like this is his canon appearance. And I think, yeah, I think Keanu Reeves would be like a good like stand-in for that. However, I don't think Keanu Reeves has a lot of acting range. I think he's fine in certain roles. I think roles where maybe he's like a more stoic figure, which actually that might be the case with Revan, depending on how they try to portray him in a potential movie, which I always said that I think it'd be really cool if Disney, especially right after they acquired the IP, like in my mind, that's the trilogy they should have made. But yeah, I mean, if they portray him as like a more stoic figure, I think that it would work out well. But outside of that, I don't feel like Keanu Reeves has a lot of acting range that is really convincing. And I don't say that because I hate him by any means. Like, he seems like a really cool guy. I don't mind him at all. And there's certain roles where I think he does well. And I think he's perfectly fine in The Matrix. Obviously, the what's that? Those action movies, the one where they kill the guy's dog. In those movies, like, it's perfect for him. It's like those movies are like made for him. But yeah, anyways. But outside of that, I wouldn't really know like who else would be another good cast for that role. I'm not really sure.
Digging up old tweets of Austin where he's saying mean things about black women. While both of these were considered newsworthy at the time, ultimately they did very little to put a dent in the Ace family's sterling reputation. But things got a little harder to justify in 2019.
Oh, John Wick,
when Austin
yeah, that's what it's
bought a
called.
lollipop in the shape of a man's private parts for a toddler he was caring for.
How
Apparently,
many John Wick
this kid
movies are there
wasn't one of
nowadays?
his
Like, I think I've seen like the first 2, maybe 3. I feel like there's at least 4 of them, right?
daughters, but instead
And then they're doing
relative of his
spin-offs, aren't they, with like other like assassins, which I think is a cool concept. Might as well leverage like this world. I think it's interesting enough. I think people like action movies where you have these characters that are like assassins, and it makes a lot of sense. Like you could just get different actors to play different characters within that universe.
wives.
Keep that in the back forever. Do not show
Now that I
to
say
anybody,
that,
okay?
isn't there a TV show based on that universe? Is that ballerina thing? Isn't that what that's all about?
That's your little secret. Guys, I'm in so much trouble. But she said she's gonna steal it if I didn't buy it, so better me buy it.
This really makes Austin seem extremely negligent, not just for buying it for this little kid, but also for taking her into a store that has that kind of merchandise in the first place. But
Okay,
instead
hold
of
on.
apologizing or
What happened here?
even
But okay.
daughters, but instead arrest for justify in 2019, when Austin bought a lollipop in the shape of a man's private parts for a toddler he was caring for. Apparently, this kid wasn't one of his.
It's so gross and weird. Like, the kid's probably not going to know what it is. It's not really going to affect the kid, but like for you to do that is, I don't know. I I would, obviously I wouldn't do that. I'd look at somebody very strangely if they did that behavior. I probably wouldn't associate with them. Like, even if you don't mean it in like a child sexual abuse kind of way, like you just think it's like kind of funny or whatever, I would just kind of still look at you like, you don't have like the temperament, you don't have the social awareness to know that like you probably shouldn't do something like that. It looks really weird.
His daughters, but instead a relative of his wife's.
Keep that in the bag forever. Do not show that to anybody, okay? That's your little secret. Guys,
And also like somebody, especially somebody who's not your child, I'd be like, you are never watching my kids again.
But she said she's gonna steal it if I didn't buy it, so better me buy it.
This really makes Austin seem extremely negligent, not just for buying it for this little kid, but also for taking her into a store that has that kind of merchandise in the first place. But instead of apologizing or even addressing the situation in any way, the Ace family just announced a temporary hiatus and came back later when they had signed with the Univision Creator Network. There were basically no long-term consequences for this controversy, but it did make people a bit more skeptical about the image Austin presented of himself as a well-meaning family man. This skepticism soon started focusing.
I didn't know. I thought Univision only did like news programming. Guess I'm totally wrong about this, right? Univision. Holy crap, I can't spell. Oh, no, I guess they do. What the hell is this? Dominica Montero. All right. Is this a recent thing? Have they always done like drama programming? I thought it was all just news stuff. Or maybe I'm mixing them up with Telemundo. Excuse my racism, sorry guys.
Focusing on the Ace family's charity events, and this is when things started to get a bit more serious. Basically, in his video announcing that they would be giving away $100,000, it was suggested that anyone who signed up had a chance to take part in the event and win.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Ace family is giving away $100,000. If you think you can do it, hit us up. If you think your favorite YouTuber or celebrity can do it, make sure you tag them. I also put the video on my Instagram, so make sure you tag them in the comments. Guys, it's a free $100K. You don't have to pay to enter.
But when the rubber met the road, it became clear that only other rich people and celebrities would be taking part, with names such as Jake Paul, Soulja Boy, Jacob Sartorius, and P. Diddy's son. As you can imagine, none of these people on the list are really going to benefit from $100,000, so it's really just something Austin was doing to get some clout online while pretending he was doing a giveaway. But it wasn't just his fans that he was basically finessing. Even other people who wanted to work with him weren't safe from this kind of shifty business. Case in point, a designer named Urban was initially contacted by Austin for some kind of collaboration, and things seemed to be going well, until he asked Austin if they could take a picture together. The mood instantly changed, and Austin refused to take the photo, saying he only took, quote, professional pictures. Of course, this was a lie. What really happened is Austin only led this guy on with the idea they'd be partnering up in some kind of business venture so that he could get his hands on enough of this guy's work to be able to plagiarize or reproduce it without giving him money or credit. Once he got what he wanted, he didn't want to take a picture because it would establish that he had met this guy, and thus he couldn't use the excuse that he had never heard of him or seen his stuff before. By the looks of it, Austin had actually done this to a bunch of other designers as well, which definitely put a dent in his ability to do business. Another incident that was heavily scrutinized was the Ace family supposedly being victim to a home invasion in August of 2018. On the surface, it seems ridiculous to criticize someone for being the victim of a crime, but many began to speculate that this crime had never actually happened at all.
So do we have your permission to take the knife for to get fingerprints over it?
Yeah, of course.
Do we have permission to take the knife for to take fingerprints off of it? Does that sound like a quote from any police officer? Or does that sound like an actor who's trying to be like a police officer? There's just something off of that.
I never really thought about this, but do they even ask, or do they just usually just take it? Like, we need to take this because it's part of like an ongoing criminal investigation. I've never really thought about that, because like technically it is somebody's property, right? But at the same time, do they have the authority if there's a criminal investigation to just take it, basically?
about it.
This particular situation is a bit odd because a real police report was eventually shared, so it's pretty unlikely that this was completely faked, which led some to theorize that although the break-in was real, they staged the aftermath to make a video out of it. Regardless of what the case is here, no matter how bad it was looking for Austin up until this point, it paled in comparison to his situation following October of 2019. Seemingly out of nowhere, a beauty blogger named Cole Kerrigan
if you're not already,
made a video
please like,
about
share, and
Austin.
subscribe.
The first claim he makes was that Austin had been unfaithful to his wife, which, while bad, is not criminal. But the next claim was that Austin, his father, and multiple other men had assaulted a woman in her hotel room.
It's kind of weird that Catherine wasn't at Austin's birthday party. I thought it was weird that I saw him out at clubs multiple times without Catherine. That's none of my business, whatever. Not that big of a deal. So a few months ago, June 22nd to be exact, I was still living in the Team 10 house and I got a call from one of my good friends. She was hysterically crying. I've never heard anyone feel so distraught in my life. I was so scared, and she began to explain to me that she was in Miami with Austin McBroom and a bunch of other people, including his assistant, his dad, security guards, other girls. XYZ happened. I'll get into that. After they all had been drinking, my two friends went back to their room to go change because the sun was setting, and that's when Austin, the security guard, the father, and two other guys came into their room. Obviously, I don't have recordings that went down in the room, but my friend told me that she repeatedly said no multiple times, over and over and over, to the point where she started crying, begging them to stop. That's when they forced themselves in her, and I will insert the photos of the blood.
I mean, I knew what the implication was, but I really want to hear the
Right
details.
here on the exact same date, June 22nd. Now, after this had happened to them, obviously...
I mean, I consider, like, rape to be a form of torture, and a lot of times with torture, I feel like it's worse than, like, death, you know what I mean? Because there's prolonged suffering. I'm gonna get on my die here. Alright.
They're traumatized, so they hide out in their room for hours. This screenshot is going to be one of Austin McBroom's friends texting them 3 times within a 3-hour period on June 22nd, right after they...
I'll have to forgive my uncultured ass. Was that James Charles or whatever his name is? Or is that somebody else?
Quite a while. It obviously pales in comparison to the accusation that Austin and multiple other men were guilty of a serious sex crime. Besides this, there were claims that Austin had multiple kids by multiple different women whom he refused to accept responsibility for, and there was a claim that he made most of his partners, consensual or otherwise, sign non-disclosure agreements and threatened them with lawsuits if they ever spoke out. Cole even adds that he spoke to Keemstar, who said he was going to report on this stuff, but ultimately it never happened because Austin supposedly paid Keem $500,000 to keep quiet. Keemstar publicly tweeted out a reply to these claims, complaining that his phone number was leaked and saying that the $500,000 thing was a joke Cole had taken out of context. I'll say right now that $500,000 is insane, and there's absolutely no way Austin paid Keemstar of all people that much money to not talk about this stuff. Eventually, one of the girls who Cole was speaking about decided to clarify things Cole apparently got wrong. In an Instagram post where she identified herself, Leslie Golden said, "To speak on this video that Cole Kerrigan posted, some of you have already figured out that I'm the other girl they're talking about.
I just realized.
I feel like this video
kind of looks like I could
for
put a
wrong
shield on
reasons,
top of a
and this
shield.
wasn't Cole's story to tell. Cole even texted me saying we could potentially get paid $100,000 from this, following the claim that Drama Alert was paid off $500K. I wasn't aware Amanda or Cole were in contact with Drama Alert to anonymously run our story, but I was aware Cole's video was being made, and I only wanted it to be factual if it was ever going to be posted. I wanted to say that Austin McBroom is not to blame in this situation and did not me or anyone. This is not what I wanted. There's several sides to every story, and this isn't how I wanted to tell mine." Once again, this was met with speculation that Leslie too was being paid to not talk about whatever happened, but clearly at this point, this was reaching a point of baseless rumors and conspiracy theories. Thanks to Leslie sharing text messages that showed Cole apparently planning to use a version of her story to get $100,000, Keemstar was vindicated, but the story was still without a proper resolution. Eventually, Catherine herself started tweeting about it and making fun fun of all the claims and suggesting that they're all fake. The only thing is, there was still a lingering accusation that one of Austin's good friends had viciously assaulted someone, and Austin's response seemed to implicitly admit to being unfaithful to his wife. This was pretty much confirmed in a video that came out later of Austin with another woman at some club. But again, there was absolutely no evidence that he had ever assaulted anyone or had children with other women. After Austin announced that he'd be taking legal action against the people slandering him, Cole's video was ultimately taken down. His mishandling of this story almost single-handedly buried the potential to expose Austin. But as the whole commotion died down, the people who were adamant about Austin's misdeeds continued to gather evidence. Unfortunately for Ace Family fans, it seems this close brush with career-ending controversies wasn't enough to get Austin and his wife to be more careful about their conduct. And as early as 2021,
ID card reads Commander S. Geeland for public security. The face on the card doesn't match any of the bodies around you. I like how she could tell even though they're face down. What is she doing here? Looks kind of sneaky, no?
Don't move. Don't say anything. Now he can't see us. I ran all the way here. I couldn't risk Commander Geeland getting you too.
So he's a traitor.
I called Commander Geeland on the holo and said a Jedi Master was coming to see him. He just said, "Thanks, Comey." Then he killed everyone with some sort of lightning. All I could do was watch. And if that's
His child of the
ID
Empire.
card, there's no
Emperor
way to
must
track
be.
him down.
So, if you guys haven't followed along, the children or the child of the Emperor or whatever, there's like this whole thing in this storyline about the Emperor, the Sith Emperor, is controlling like Jedi and other people through some sort of mind control. And that's the plot that's the overarching plot that we're trying to resolve. Anyways, okay, she says, and if that's his ID card, there's no way to track him down.
Any idea what he wants or where he would go?
I don't know. The last have been a nightmare. Now this. When the Empire blew one of the vaults open, Commander Geeland found an ancient computer inside. He said the computer had data about Belsavis. He wanted to go back and study it.
Did this computer have information about an elder race?
If it did, he never told me. The vault isn't far, but since the alien population broke out, it's a war zone. But if you can reach it, that computer probably has whatever you're looking for, and then you can punish Commander Geeland, right?
I'll make my judgment once I find him.
I should see to the bodies. I can't let their IDs fall into enemy hands. Best of luck, Jedi.
Looks like she needs a hug or something.
They were already back in the headlines, this time for very different reasons. Catherine had a contract with a cosmetics company called TBL, where she would be its public face and promote the brand while they handled the back end. But allegedly on March 10th of 2021, she logged into the company's accounts and changed all of their passwords in what is described as an attempted coup, followed by threats to dissolve it and appropriate all of its assets if the company didn't give her what she wanted. This is an insane financial maneuver, and it was serious enough that the company actually actually sued her for it. And this was taking place around the same time that the
What would-
Ace
what
family
would possess
channel
you to
was
think
starting
that
to
would work?
experience a serious dip in viewership. Austin, meanwhile, was trying his hand at influencer boxing, which led many to speculate that Catherine's actions were some desperate attempt to make some money to maintain their luxurious lifestyle. Ultimately, this boxing match was also an attempt to capitalize on the influencer boxing trend of the time, and they definitely were
assuming
expecting to make some
it's
serious
the same
cash
as
from
that,
it.
like,
But what
Creator
many
Clash
didn't
thing, or
realize is that
something else?
Austin was not just a fighter. He was a part of the production, setting up the entire thing. Well, shortly after Austin fought Bryce Hall, a legal battle broke out as multiple parties were alleging they hadn't been paid what they were promised by Austin. Reason being that the fight's viewership drastically underperformed and didn't make any money. Just a few months later, Austin was handed a $200,000 fine for doing an impromptu fan meetup that ended up blocking the streets of Beverly Hills for hours. The same month that this went down, the McBroom's $10 million mansion was foreclosed.
That's crazy.
basically
Imagine the
confirming
traffic in
two
LA already as it
possibilities.
is,
One,
and then
that
you
they
add
were
that on top of
rapidly
it.
running out of money, or two, they just weren't making any. While this should have been a sign for them to take a step back, regroup, and focus on long-term financial planning, instead, they continued to make rash decisions with their deteriorating brand. In 2022, they decided to slow down their content creation efforts to host an Ace Family Festival, which they were going to charge $300 per ticket for. I don't know what kind of low-watt NPC you'd have to be to even consider going to an Ace Family Festival at a $300 price point, but clearly the family was desperate enough to try anything at this point. The most scammy looking part of this was that they were selling the tickets before they even had a location or precise date. And on top of that, they even sold a VIP gold ticket for $500, which also granted you access to Austin's next boxing match, which also hadn't even been booked. To no one's surprise, the Ace Family Festival was a complete catastrophe, with extremely long lines of people under extreme heat.
What? I'm surprised people even showed up for this. Like, what are you expecting to get out of something like this? You meet these people and what? Like, what do you talk about? What is there? It just doesn't really seem super interesting. But I mean, then again, this isn't the kind of thing that appeals to me, so maybe I just don't get it.
Breaking down and ridiculously.
I also never really understand, not to hate on it or anything, but like those like fan or like nerdy sci-fi stuff where they go to like the fan meetup things where they have like the voice actors are there in a panel and people like ask them questions and stuff. Like all the power to you. You know, if you're into that sort of thing, that's cool. Not hurting anybody. Enjoy what you enjoy. I just personally don't really get it. Like I wouldn't even know what I would ask them. Like, what do you ask? Like, did you have fun playing this character? Or, well, I guess there are interesting questions you could ask, right? Like, what, as like a voice actor, how do you get into the right headspace, or how do you decide like how you're going to portray this character? How are you going to use the voice? If you voice different characters, what does that process look like? When you decide like how are you going to modulate your voice for this particular character versus another one? Do you relate to it? I guess there's interesting stuff you can ask there. I don't know.
Expensive food. The whole thing was documented by commentary YouTuber Atozy, where even among the many issues, you can see how empty it was.
I'd probably say maybe 300 or 400 people are here.
While the public doesn't have access to the financial details, given the lack of attendance, it's very unlikely that it came close to breaking even. It seemed like the Ace family had intended this festival as their exit plan from YouTube. One final swing at squeezing some money out of their audience before they disappeared. But by the time they put it on, their reputation was already in the gutter, and no one cared to even show up. In mid-2023, they tested the waters to see if a return to form was possible, and while the video did get millions of views, they wouldn't upload again in the immediate aftermath, with no explanation given. Ultimately, it seems the answer may have been relationship troubles, as in January of the following year, they came forward to announce that they were getting a divorce. As happy as many were that the Ace family was finally coming to an end, it wasn't the satisfying crash out they were looking for, with Catherine and the kids drifting steadily out of the spotlight, and Austin only occasionally showing his face to try and run get-rich-quick schemes. This story looks to be
I have a bad
dead
habit
and
sometimes of
buried.
forgetting
But
to
in
like
November
heal in
of
between
2024,
matches.
it was suddenly revived by the announcement that Catherine was now with someone else. With the media excited at the prospect of more Ace family drama, people waited with bated breath for a response from Austin. And they did get one, although not in the way they expected. Within a week or so of this announcement, Austin McBroom had a lawsuit filed against him for allegedly recording a loud and disruptive skit that exposed a woman's address. Apparently, these videos were posted to his Snapchat and caused this woman to be harassed by strangers as if she was somehow connected to Austin. when in actuality, he just picked a random person's house to do a sketch wherein he pretended to be getting kicked out and having his belongings all scattered on the front lawn. The driving factor behind the lawsuit is that the harassment this woman received required her to temporarily move out and pay double rent for a month, all thanks to Austin's antics. He and Catherine's name popping up in news outlets led to a resurgence in attention, and sharks from their past began circling as they smelled blood.
Ooh, that's good.
Case in point,
like those
Cole
sounds.
Kerrigan
It's
came
weird.
back to revisit his controversy after having been completely silent about it for years.
You guys remember this little video? That's me. And real
I
ones
do
will know
remember.
when that video was posted, Austin and his team posted a statement calling me a liar, and to this
Oh my
day
God.
I get called
I had a
a
dead end.
liar when it comes to accusations because I outed him and his dad for my friend at the time. But I just want to say, after that happened, Austin hand delivered me $40,000 cash just to not say anything after his team posted that and to delete my video. Here's some proof, but if y'all want a more in-depth story time, let me know.
Cole once again comes across as an extremely unreliable narrator for a few reasons. He says he got $40,000 in cash from Austin, but as Leslie showed in the text messages that she posted, money was always Cole's objective from the start, even if he had to use other people's supposed victimhood to do it. At the same time, Cole's evidence that he was paid by Austin is just a picture of him holding money. There is no proof Austin gave him this money. Then again, Cole claims Austin also got to Leslie to keep her quiet, so it's honestly impossible to be certain of what the truth is here, given how much misinfo is being thrown back and forth. But I think in regards to this specific situation, unless some more compelling proof comes out showing Austin is guilty or has paid people off, he's probably innocent. Ultimately, this topic coming back didn't
Here's this proof right here. Watch.
really pan out to
Show
any
you right now
actual
what his
charges being
actual
pressed,
proof
and due to
was.
how irrelevant Austin and the Ace family were at this point, it barely mattered anymore. In May of 2025, Catherine took part in an episode of the Call Her Daddy podcast. This name is so cooked, man. To talk about everything going on in her life. She says a lot of stuff about how their financial situation fell apart and how Austin wasn't faithful, but it's worth remembering that she stuck with this guy for years and was more of an accomplice than a victim, so it's hard not to take it with a grain of salt when she suggests that Austin was the one who brought the problems around. Finally, on Christmas Day 2025, the Ace family uploaded
This is
another
the real
new
source
video
right
at
here.
last. Catherine is nowhere to be seen.
The source says he made it the
Instead, it's just
fuck up.
Austin and the kids. It's
I
hard
love
to know
this
what's
meme.
going
I don't know
on
why,
behind the
but I
scenes
just
with
love
these
this meme.
people. Maybe Catherine wants to come back to this channel. Maybe just Austin does. Maybe they're running out of money again. We simply can't know it all. And in some ways, the public isn't owed an explanation anyway, because we don't know these people. There's no denying that the Ace family had a meteoric rise and fall. And in a way, they're different from the other channels I've talked about today, because Austin and Catherine never outright hurt their kids, outside of the obvious paradigm of family vlogging being generally unethical. Ultimately,
I mean, there
are a
is
lot of
that.
questions still unanswered about their time on YouTube as a whole. But given everything
The other
I've shown
people who are
today,
watching are
maybe
pretty
some
terrible by
questions are better
comparison.
left unanswered. It's also for the best that the last family we're talking about is no longer allowed to operate on YouTube. Although, fair warning, this is easily the most horrific out of all of them. Unlike everyone else on this list, Michelle Hackney Hobson's 7 children, ages ranging from 3 to 15, were all adopted. Due to the unusual nature of her household, her channel got a
Okay,
lot of
well, we gotta see
attention
what this
during
one
its
looks
run
like.
from 2012
Fantastic adventure. We have a T-Rex.
to
Kinda liking it so
unusual
far.
na- children, ages
Oh,
ranging from
geez.
3 to 15, were
Okay.
all adopted. Due to the unusual nature of her household, her channel got a lot of attention during its run from 2012 to 2019, reaching over 350 million views and over 800,000 subscribers. But as early as 2017, the public was aware of a few huge red flags, signaling that something much darker was afoot behind the scenes. For reasons unknown, one of her children was seen running through the neighborhood without clothes on, which was reported to the police, who then forwarded the issue to the Department of Child Safety. As it turns out, Michelle had complaints levied against her since before the creation of her YouTube channel. As far back as 2011, the first complaint claimed that Michelle would lock her foster kids in a room where they yelled and cried helplessly, and she refused to let them out. Following this first complaint, there were a number of accusations made over the next few years. One claim suggested that she forced one of her kids to stand in a corner for prolonged periods of time as punishment while she went to bed. Another claim was that she she had her kids wearing ripped shoes that were 3 sizes too small. On January 31st of 2014, one of her kids ended up hospitalized in a mental ward after an incident at school, although we don't exactly know what went down. Later that year, another claim was made against Michelle to DCS. They claimed she didn't clean her kids, which led them to have feces on their skin, causing abrasions and infections. In 2015, someone alleged that she had thrown a can at one of her kids' heads, leaving a scar. In June that same year, it was claimed she gave one of them a black eye, several bruises, skin rashes, and that they were showing signs of starvation. In 2017, another claim was made, this one even more serious. They said that Michelle was locking children in a closet for 90% of the day, withholding food from them, and spraying them with mace as a form of punishment. With the sheer volume of claims being made against her over the years, you would think that a serious investigation would have taken place. Despite visiting Michelle's home a total of 9 times, they never managed to get anything definitive on her, and as a result, she was allowed to continue running her channel with no issues. For several years...
That's the crazy thing about, like, parental rights and CPS and everything. Like, I feel like sometimes I hear almost like the same exact people, depending on the story, either complain about, like, CPS being a thing and having too much power, and then other times when there's an abusive parent, it comes out, and it's like, why didn't CPS do something? And it's like, unfortunately, there's a balance between what people expect for parents to have rights, which makes it hard for CPS to just, you know, just take their kids away or do whatever they want to do. And then on the flip side of that, you know, you want to protect kids from abuse, but then the parents, you know, get to have a lot of say in what they get to do, and they can hide things and whatnot, and so, I don't know.
There's Michelle.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen on Netflix, they had a documentary on, what was that kid's name? Something Gonzalez? Pretty terrible. Don't watch it if you know, have a sensitive stomach, I guess. Netflix. Gonzalez. Adrian Gonzalez. Oh, never mind. Netflix. Maybe I have the wrong name. Maybe it's just different. Adrian Gonzalez? No. Oh. Excuse me, sorry. Gabriel Fernandez, my bad. I'm just mixing up all these like Hispanic names today. I am Mexican, by the way, but I'm not super duper fluent in Spanish by any means. This is a terrible, terrible case. It's really sad, and it's kind of interesting in the sense that when they cover, like in the Netflix documentary, they talk about how, I think this happened in like LA County, and how there's so much like institutional momentum or inertia. There's so much like red tape, bureaucracy. There's such a huge caseload and not enough like funding and staff. And the state winds up outsourcing some of their services to like these private contractors, which I didn't even know that was like a thing, or like essential government services to be contracted out to private, you know, entities that have maybe a different kind of conflict of interest. And it's just like these cases just kind of fall through the cracks, and you kind of look at CPS that was involved in this case, or like this kid's teacher who noticed like some of the abuse, and she reported it, and like things wouldn't really happen. But then when you talk to like the CPS workers, some of the CPS workers, like they don't have the resources. There's, again, like there's parental rights that get in their way of actually being able to like effectively monitor for abuse, because I don't know, I remember, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I think there's things like you have to give like a notice to parents, like advance notice before you show up to the house. So it's like if the parents are abusive, they're able to just hide that, knowing that, oh, the social worker is going to come by at, you know, this time or whatever. And so It's tough. I don't know.
Flew right under the radar, completely unfettered, making videos prominently featuring the children she was actively hurting. The suffering wouldn't end until March of 2019, when one of Michelle's biological children, Megan Hobson, decided to step in, and the police were called to perform a welfare check. What they found wasn't just confirmation that all of the complaints to DCS were real, but in actuality, it was much worse. As reported by the Maricopa City Police Department, the children, one of
Okay, hold on. Before I dive into this part, I need to blow my nose. My allergies are bothering the hell out of me right now. But I also want to look up real quick before I do that for a wellness check. Do wellness checks? I'm assuming those don't need to be like informed in advance. I'm sure they could just like show up to your house, right, and just check to see how you're doing. Do wellness checks need to be announced prior? Wellness checks generally do not need to be announced to a resident in advance. Okay, let's look at CPS. Do CPS checks need to be announced prior? Okay, no, they don't. And home visits do not need to be announced in advance. The protect children investigators often arrive unannounced to access the home environment, child safety, and living conditions without prior preparation. You may have a right to know the allegations, but not the reporter's identity. But I'm assuming in these kind of situations that they would need a warrant. So that's a thing, though. Probably if you don't have enough probable, I don't know if it'd be probable cause in the situation, what the standard would be, but I wonder, because like they could probably show up without a warrant, but I don't know if they can get access to the home without a warrant. Does CPS need a warrant to enter the house? I bet you it is the case, and this is probably the yep. So they could probably show up unannounced, but they need an actual warrant in order to enter the home. Or voluntary consent, you can consent to it. But see, that's the issue is, like, well, I wonder, if somebody were to report to CPS, like, oh, this child is, I suspect, abuse, would a judge grant a warrant just based off of that alone? I'm not sure. Anyways, that's a little bit of a rabbit hole. Give me a second. I need to blow my nose real fast. Be right back. Hold on. Curious too, for those of you that are watching, do you follow my channel already, or are you guys are just looking maybe for like someone who's doing a let's play on like MMOs? I'm gonna ask that question in the chat actually. Do you follow my channel or just searched for let's play? Because I also have a follow-up question to that too. Follower or new? That's what it'll be. All right.
of which was 3 years old, looked malnourished with dark rings under their eyes and pale complexions, substantiating the claim that she kept them inside and didn't allow them to have regular sleep.
El Sav is pretty, right?
One of the daughters immediately
one of the
offered
better looking
information
environments
to the police,
this
saying
game.
that she was kept in a closet for days at a time with no food or water, pepper sprayed, forced to have ice baths, and that her head had been forced underwater for periods of time as punishment. And unfortunately, the harm that Michelle dished out didn't limit itself to being physical. Instead, it was also sexual. A lot of the suffering she inflicted was apparently motivated, or at least directly related to, the kids not performing in videos exactly how Michelle wanted them to. It is deeply disturbing that all of this was going.
With this character, I usually rely on having a tank in the party, and I forgot to call Kaizen back. So I just drew all the fire on myself.
On while she uploaded almost weekly to YouTube, parading her victims around and blatantly profiting off of their pain on the regular. And surprisingly, it gets even darker. 2 of her sons were in on it, so to speak. Logan and Ryan Hackney were not adopted, and they were promptly charged with failing to report the crimes taking place inside the house. Once
you have to wonder in a scenario like this too, like, it's almost like I would imagine that those kids probably wouldn't have been like sexual predators inherently. But, you know, if not for the mom's abuse, and she probably sexually abused those boys as well, you know? Like, and this is one of the tragic things about stories like this is you have kids who probably could have had a normal life, but, like, you have... Like, I hate to say, like, ruined forever. I don't necessarily mean that, but at least, like, heavily damaged those people. And a lot of times, you know, it takes... sometimes like years of therapy and stuff in order for them to reach a place where they're able to have like a normal life again.
It became clear that there was no way they weren't aware of what was going on. For whatever legal technicality, these 2 had their charges dismissed. But as it turns out, years later...
Oh, these guys are Ratataki. It's like the species they are in the game. Or in Star Wars. They're the same as me. Why are they attacking me? We're brethren. Brothers and sisters.
Both of them were once again charged with felony sexual misconduct with minors. Although it's unclear if these charges are related to their foster siblings or if they're about unrelated crimes. One piece of information that is available is that one of them, Logan, is alleged to have been in contact with 2 minors under the age of 15 between the years of 2008 and 2013, while the other one, Ryan, was in contact with one between 2011 and 2012. If these victims are indeed their siblings, it adds another degree of perversion and evil to this whole story. Michelle, meanwhile, didn't end up serving her full sentence, as she died in November of 2019 at the age of 48.
Isn't that great?
Prosecutor leading the case,
I mean, that's sarcastically, obviously.
death is actually a good thing.
On the surface, family vlogging channels...
This is like, by the way, one of my views on like the death penalty. I don't really favor the death penalty, generally speaking, for a variety of reasons. But one of those reasons is I feel like it's like the easy way out. I feel like if you've committed a crime that's heinous enough to warrant the death penalty, that honestly I think that you should have to like sit in prison for your life and think about what you did and have to live with that, rather than just getting like a lethal injection that you're done with and you don't even...
What could be more wholesome than smiling families,
like you barely
opening
even feel it
presents, and having fun? It's all the more disturbing then when the curtain is peeled back and some of them turn out to be more cruel than any viewer would have ever imagined. But for me, it's not just the bad apples. The entire genre is essentially predicated on robbing kids of their youth and blasting it out to the world for everyone to see their every moment. Have we not learned from how developmentally stunted many child actors turn out to be? I guess the answer is no, we haven't learned. And everything I've talked about in this video will probably be repeated again.
I wonder too, with respect to that,
and until next
that topic,
time, leave me alone.
Like, is there a way to have child actors without incurring the damage that's typically associated with it? Or is that just something that you're never really going to be able to escape, either because of the nature of that kind of work or whatever, or the impact that it has on a child to have that kind of popularity? I don't know. You know, because like obviously there's a need for child actors, because if we're making movies about humans and life and everything, like there's children involved in that, so it makes sense to have child actors, but how do you do it in such a way where they're not suffering the repercussions? Because like, even if you don't have a scenario where they're being predated on by adults in the industry who are predators, there's still that angle of like the popularity itself kind of precludes them from having like, a normal upbringing. So I don't know how you go around that. I guess one thing maybe is, what was the actress? It's not Dakota Fanning, right? Is it Eli Fanning? Not Eli Fanning. Ellie Fanning? No, Ellie Fanning's her sister. I think it is Dakota. Dakota was like a child actress, and I remember she was very popular when she was a child actress. She was good, you know, for a child. I think she got a lot of acclaim, like, wow, she could really act, especially for a child. But she kind of disappeared for a few years, and at least that's my understanding. And my understanding was that she disappeared because I think her parents wanted her to have a few years of separation in order to have like a normal upbringing. Maybe something like that. I don't know. All right, well, that's the end of that video. We're going to switch it up for a minute here. And this might be a little bit more like science-y, cerebral. I like Veritasium. I don't know if you guys ever watch this channel. It's usually like science stuff. This was one about asbestos. And apparently it's a bigger problem than we thought. So I'm curious what that means. Let's hear. Or where they at? Approximately 30 miles from what? Las Vegas. Outside of Las Vegas.
They're just everywhere.
I'm assuming what we're going to talk about here, let me see if I guess this correctly, that not only is asbestos bad for our health, so there was a big drive in the past couple decades to eliminate it from, obviously from new construction, but also when there's renovations. I'm guessing what we're going to learn here is that the disposal and processing of asbestos has also caused like environmental damage. Let's see.
Whoa, this is really blue. You should come, like, this is so blue.
Look at how many you're finding.
I feel like all of them. If it weren't so dangerous, it'd be a fun activity to do.
These are the big ones. So what about all the particles you can't see?
This same kind of material was used in the construction of the World Trade Center buildings. And when the towers fell, it was pulverized to microscopic size and released into the air.
No, I didn't really think about that. I've seen a few documentaries on 9/11, and they might have mentioned that at some point. Maybe I just forgot about it. But that is pretty crazy to think about. That you'd have all that asbestos like pushed out into the wider like area around the towers, even affecting people that weren't in the towers themselves.
Remained airborne.
Because like you think about the debris and the dirt that's kicked up, and you always think about like obviously that's going to have an effect on people. But you don't think about the aspect that, and it's probably not even just asbestos. Like you have the asbestos, you have like the fire retardant material. I wonder if that vaporizes in a collapse like that and turns into something that can also be damaging to the lungs. I want to look that up. I'm curious. Is fire retardant vaporized? I don't even know if that's the right word to say. Vaporized in a demolition. Fire retardants are generally not vaporized into a gas during typical mechanical demolition, but they can become aerosolized, that's probably the word, as dust or fine particles, creating inhalation hazards for workers, while some chemical coatings may release gases if they decompose under extreme heat. Oh, but this would be both, right? You would have extreme heat in the case of the building collapse on 9/11. The physical process of tearing down a building primarily turns treated materials like into airborne particulate matter. When structures containing treated materials are crushed, cut, or broken, hazardous. Oh, that's the other thing too. You have glass. Glass probably in a collapse like 9/11 probably turns into fine powder. Ooh. Hazardous chemicals in the fire retardants can become airborne as dust, which is considered a significant hazard. Oh man, okay. I'm curious about that too. Was glass, like you had falling glass chunks, glass chunks that were a danger to people that were in the vicinity of the collapse. But like, I wonder about like finely crushed glass particles that become aerosolized. Was glass aerosolized? in the 9/11 collapse. Yes, massive amounts of glass were pulverized and aerosolized into a fine dust during the collapse of World Trade Center towers on 9/11. The resulting dust clouds contain roughly 40% glass and other fibers. Wow. 40% of the dust clouds were glass. That's crazy to think about. Including microscopic glass fibers which travel through the air and deposit over lower Manhattan. The glass particles are often in the respirable range. So in other words, they're small enough to be inhaled into your lungs. Capable of traveling deep in the lungs. These fibers, along with other chemicals, contributed to severe respiratory issues, often referred to as World Trade Center cough. Damn, okay.
For days, and thousands of people unknowingly breathed them in. They buried themselves deep within people's lungs, wreaking havoc and causing all sorts of diseases.
We've known for decades that these particles are extremely dangerous. But when the towers fell, no one was warned.
The concentrations are such that they don't pose a health hazard.
And yet today, the diseases linked to that dust have killed more than twice as many people as the attacks themselves. Once we started looking, we kept finding this material in places we never expected.
He was telling newspapers, people aren't just eating it and breathing it, they're mainlining it.
In popular off-roading spots, in makeup, and even kids' toys.
Say it ain't so, Mickey Mouse crayons.
No.
It's been detected in the dust around schools and homes.
Hold on a second.
5 generations of people.
Oh shoot. Give me a minute. My earbuds I think died. I need to switch over to my headphones. But let me kill this accolade first. Okay. I had to get the cute headphones with the bunny ears. I'm just kidding. But anyways, let's see here. All right. I need to switch the audio capture. There we go. Let's see.
People died up there.
Okay,
and instead of banning it outright, we let it spread. Some countries are still importing hundreds of thousands of tons each year, and it's estimated that by 2035, nearly 2.8 million people might die because of it. This is a video about a deadly miracle material we can't stop using. This investigation is based on publicly available documents, recordings, and third-party sources. All of our links are in the description. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring this video. More about them later. There is this story about the ancient Greeks from around the 2nd century AD. They had this golden lantern that would burn for a whole year without going out, all because of a very special wick that just wouldn't burn down. So how did they develop this technology? Well, the truth is, they didn't. They found it. Imagine you're walking around 2,000 years ago and you see this fluffy looking stuff poking out the ground. It's got all of these fibers that you can pull apart and twist into shapes.
Okay. From a physics standpoint, this probably has a high heat capacity. That's what makes it a good insulator. And also is the reason why it probably takes a long time to actually burn off.
First off, let's get a nice bundle. So it looks like cotton.
It looks like it would burn really well. Like it would just...
Yeah, you can start a fire with it, right? All right.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Oh, I want to see this.
But it's not burning.
That's because this is actually a rock. It's a naturally occurring mineral.
The core building block is simple. It's a silicon atom surrounded by 4 oxygen atoms.
Now, silicon has 4 electrons in its outer shell, but it really wants 8. So each of the oxygens shares 1 electron with it. But oxygen doesn't share evenly. Since it's more electronegative than silicon, it pulls those shared electrons closer to itself. This leaves the oxygen side slightly negative and the silicon side slightly positive. Now there's an electrostatic attraction between these atoms which pulls the atoms closer together and strengthens this bond. The result is an incredibly stable, pyramid-shaped unit called a silica tetrahedron. But if you look at the oxygens in these corner spots, they've only shared one electron, but they actually want two to complete their outer shells. So the corners link up with other silicon atoms to form more tetrahedra, and in this way, the structure just keeps growing.
The bonds inside here are incredibly strong and stable, and because the atoms are already tightly bound to the oxygens inside the silicate structure, the oxygen in the air has nothing to react with, so the material doesn't burn.
But overall, there's nothing special about these building blocks. More than 90% of the Earth's minerals are made from this stuff, everything from quartz to clay.
What makes this material special is how those units link up.
Here, the tetrahedra have formed a sheet, and bonded to it, there is actually a second sheet made of magnesium atoms and hydroxyl groups, which are just an oxygen and a hydrogen stuck together. Now, the atomic spacings of these two layers are slightly different, so there's a tiny mismatch which causes tension between these layers, causing them to curl up, and you end up with these tiny scroll-like tubes. These tubes don't break down easily under heat. The structure stays stable up to around 600 degrees Celsius.
So like all these individual fibers that you see running through here, those are all like these scrolls?
Yes.
What is that? What was that bend?
That's just a place where I twisted the fiber with my tweezers.
Ah, okay.
And when you twist these fibers, they actually don't break. So it's literally a rock you can weave. And when you do, the fibers form a tangled layered structure. So if heat is introduced, it has to pass from fiber to fiber across many contact points with air filling the spaces between them. This reduces how quickly heat can spread through the material. Because of that, people started weaving it into things like theater curtains and insulation blankets for steam engines, even fireproof clothing. Essentially,
I think this would mean it would have, make sure I understand this correctly. I think it'd have a high surface area per volume. Is that right? I think that would be correct, right? But I feel like you typically associate that with being like a heat sink. Okay, anyways.
Anywhere they didn't want something to catch fire.
But by far the most important use came around in the 1800s.
Between 1790 and 1870, the number of people living in urban areas in America jumped from 1 in 20 to around 1 in 4. So to accommodate this, people had to tack on extra floors onto existing buildings, and courtyards would then be filled with makeshift extensions, effectively tightly packing all of these buildings together. Pretty much all these buildings were made out of wood, but the people inside still cooked with open flames, they used gas lamps, they lit candles, so one accident and an entire neighborhood could go up in flames. That reality hit New York City in December 1835, when within a span of just 2 days, 3 separate fires erupted in Manhattan. One bystander described what followed as an ocean of fire with roaring, rolling, burning waves. By the end, a third of a mile of Manhattan was engulfed, destroying nearly 700 buildings at a cost of $20 million. That's over $730 million of today's money. Similar catastrophes were happening in cities all over the world. Chicago, London, Hamburg, Tokyo.
When will this appalling rate of destruction come to an end?
The problem was that when a building burned, it spewed up embers into the air. These then got carried by the wind and landed onto other roofs, setting them alight. So 23 years after the Great Fire of New York, a 21-year-old named Henry Ward Johns set out to break that chain reaction by making roofs fireproof. But that's trickier than it sounds. Whatever his solution was, it had to be usable across an entire city. So cheap and easy enough to mass produce, durable enough to sit exposed on rooftops, baking in the summer sun, freezing in the winter, and most importantly, it was not allowed to ignite even when exposed to burning embers. Now, Johns knew of a mineral that was already being spun into fireproof fabric, but only the long fibers were useful for thread. The shorter ones were actually swept aside as waste. Johns realized those scraps were exactly what he needed: fireproof, tough, and most importantly, cheap. So he set up a makeshift lab in his basement apartment and started experimenting. He heated up tar in his tea kettle, smeared that onto cloth, and then pressed in these tiny fibers. Then he wringed the whole thing through his wife's brand new clothes wringer, and when he...
Are you guys hearing the game? I don't really hear the game. Like I'm gonna go through this cutscene, I'm not gonna hear anything. Something about when I switched over the speakers. Or to my headset here. Alright, we'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. Yeah, no, I don't have audio on this. Alright, I'm gonna restart the game, but we're gonna listen to the Veritasium while we're doing that.
He tested it. It worked. It didn't burn. In 1868, Henry Ward Johns patented his invention, and by 1927, the company he built was generating $45 million in annual sales, more than $800 million in today's money. Soon, people were using this fire-resistant stuff in all kinds of building materials. Across America, consumption grew from around 20,400 tons in 1900 to a peak of 803,000 tons in 1973. Because of that, pretty much every building in the US, public or private, commercial or residential, used some form of this material. During that same period, stronger building codes, safer heating systems, and other fire-resistant materials were also introduced, and it showed. During that time, fire-related deaths dropped around 80%. So this material likely helped save millions of lives worldwide. Because it couldn't be destroyed by fire, the name the ancient Greeks gave it, it stuck around. They called it inextinguishable, or asbestos.
I never even thought of it, but it does kind of sound like a
By the mid-20th
like
century,
Greek word.
asbestos was everywhere. Inside brake pads, toasters, ironing boards, hair dryers, surgical dressings,
Is it called-
blankets, you know,
Is it pronounced asbestos? I always thought it was asbestos. Maybe that's like the regional accent.
brewers filtered beer through it. One brand of
Oh god,
toothpaste even used it for
filtering beer through it.
extra polish. The fake snow in
You want a little
department
lung
store
cancer
windows
with
and
your
in
beer?
movies like The
I guess it
Wizard of
wouldn't be
Oz,
lung cancer because you'd
all
be
of that's
digesting it
asbestos too.
or ingesting it.
Unusual weather we're having, ain't it?
Sorry, Dorothy.
It was such a big deal, Marvel even had a villain called Asbestos Lady. She'd set a fire to escape the police, and she'd easily walk through it safe inside her asbestos bodysuit.
Asbestos Lady.
To feed this demand, asbestos was pulled out of the ground on an enormous scale. Major mining operations spread across Canada, Russia, and South Africa, with global production peaking at approximately 4.8 million tons per year in 1977. But the reason asbestos ended up in so many different products is because it's actually a group of different minerals. That white fluffy stuff we tried to burn earlier, it's called chrysotile, and it belongs to a mineral family known as the serpentines. But other types of asbestos looked completely different. For instance, there is also brown asbestos, known as amosite. It forms thick fibers that almost look like wood splinters, strong, stable, and highly heat resistant. So it was perfect for putting into building materials like cement panels. This type belongs to a different mineral family, the amphiboles. Here, instead of forming sheets, the silica tetrahedra lock into rigid ladder-like chains. In amosite, iron and magnesium ions, along with hydroxyl groups embedded in the structure, bind those chains together, forming these long, needle-like fibers. But tweak that chemistry just slightly so that now iron and sodium ions bind the chains, and you get this, blue asbestos, or chrysotolite. These crystals split easily along their length, and they create these fine, flexible fibers that are still extraordinarily strong with tensile strengths comparable to high-grade steel wire. This type went into chemical-resistant insulation, shipyards, and even filters inside early gas masks. Oh, and there was another use, one that's hard to believe now.
In this magic box I have right here is something that was manufactured right here in North Carolina. They're cigarettes produced in the
Oh, God.
1950s. And if you look at the filter, you see the filters.
Damn, imagine that. You're filtering your cigarettes to try to avoid some of the toxic chemicals in there, but you're filtering it through asbestos.
Asbestos. This is Kent with the
It's big
micronite
yikers right
filter.
there.
It was manufactured with crystalline asbestos in the filter itself.
So you were not only smoking, you were smoking it through a blue asbestos filter?
Yes.
What a deal.
Only Kent has the revolutionary new micronite filter you've heard so much about. Kent and only Kent filters best. Filters best. Filters best.
In the early 1900s, a young woman named Nellie Kershaw worked in a factory that spun asbestos fibers into.
Sorry, Jedi. That terminal's already been neutralized. Welcome to Belsavis. I'm Commander Geeland, and you've just wandered into my territory.
I know what you are. I've encountered your siblings already.
Yes, Places always had a theatrical streak, but now you're here. I know you came for the Eshka, but they won't be following you anywhere. This prison and everything in it is mine. Every droid, turret, and camera. You're a rat in a very big cage, and you'll die like one.
You can destroy my body, but I will always be part of the Force.
As you like. You're now a Category 10 escapee. The prison systems are authorized to kill you on sight. You won't survive the onslaught for very long.
Jedi, can you hear me?
You have my attention.
I am a friend. There's little time. The other has put a Category 10 tag on you. You must remove the tag or you'll never survive Belsavis. The terminal here will remove the tag, but first it must be repaired.
You appear well acquainted with Belsavis.
Focus, Jedi. If you die here, who will the Eshka follow? This terminal self-repair module has been removed. A new module from another Rakata terminal with some Republic parts as raw materials should fix it. Take this data to guide you. Disassemble these terminals to find. Be cautious, the terminals lie in dangerous. Why can't I usually just do that?
To threads. Every day, she breathed in the dust that those machines threw into the air. So by her early 30s, she was so sick she could barely breathe. And when she finally decided to ask the factory for help, they refused. They said helping out workers would set a dangerous precedent. Nellie died shortly after, at the age of just 33. Nellie's case caught the attention of pathologist Dr. William Cook. When he opened up her chest, her lungs were gray and scarred, almost blue-black, like they had a huge internal bruise. And when his scalpel passed through them, they rasped. It was like scraping against sandpaper. The tissue was full of mineral grit, and under the microscope, the cause was unmistakable. Asbestos fibers lodged into the lung tissue.
If we were to inhale some type of an asbestos fiber, I kind of think of them as like little microscopic straight arrows. They kind of just shoot down through the nose or the mouth and move down through the trachea. If we continue on going down here, we get smaller and smaller as we penetrate deeper into the lung tissue. And then you get into these alveolar sacs. These asbestos fibers, and they lodge in the tissue there. And lung secretions, enzymes, even white blood cells, they have a really hard time breaking those down.
You end up with scarring deep inside the lungs.
In 1924, Dr. Cook published the first medical description of this condition, which became known as asbestosis.
I was about to say,
When these asbestos fibers lodge into the lungs, the body treats them like invaders. Specialized cells called macrophages move in, cells whose job it is to engulf and digest bacteria, dust, or debris. But asbestos fibers are too long and stiff to swallow, It's kind of like trying to eat a toothpick sideways. The macrophages keep trying and failing, and in the process, they release inflammatory chemicals that damage the surrounding lung tissue. So workers breathing in asbestos dust day after day accumulated more and more damage. When doctors sent by the British government examined hundreds of asbestos workers, they found that more than 25% already showed signs of lung disease. And for workers with over 20 years of exposure, that number was closer to 80%.
So in 1931, the government officially classified asbestos as a workplace hazard, making it one of the first industrial materials to be regulated for health risks.
But the new rules only covered factories where asbestos was manufactured. They didn't extend to other workers like shipbuilders, miners, or construction workers who were regularly exposed to asbestos dust. Across the Atlantic, things weren't much better. There was no binding federal asbestos rules in the States, only a recommendation.
The US Public Health Service suggested a temporary exposure limit of 5 million asbestos particles for a single cubic foot of air, which meant that a worker breathing normally could inhale over 300 million asbestos particles an hour and still be considered within guidelines.
This became especially problematic for shipyard workers when World War II broke out. Ships were packed with asbestos insulation, so workers spent their days cutting and fitting asbestos in thick clouds of fibers. And according to the guidelines of the day, these levels met the official definition of safe working conditions. In fact, asbestos was still marketed as a magic material.
A few years earlier, Time magazine actually put Johns Manville's president, Lewis H. Brown, on its April 3, 1939 cover. But in the early 1960s, finally, one doctor started connecting the dots on asbestos.
Dr. Irving Selikoff was running a small clinic in Paterson, New Jersey, when the local asbestos workers union asked if their members could come and see him. Before long, he'd seen multiple workers with either severe lung scarring or, more concerningly, an extremely rare cancer called mesothelioma.
But mesothelioma is strongly associated with asbestos exposure and is cancer of those cells lining the inside of the chest cavity, and most commonly it's this pleural cavity. These pleural membranes are lined with mesothelial cells. Sometimes what happens is the fibers will work their way out of the lung tissue and directly get into this cavity here, and they can literally pierce out the lungs.
They cause constant irritation, and over time, that can trigger cancerous changes in the cells that make up those linings. Selikoff needed more data to understand the scale of the problem, but factory owners refused to share medical records from their workers with him. So Selikoff had to get creative. See, during World War II, many shipyard workers employed by the Navy underwent federal background checks. Thousands of these men had been working with asbestos to insulate ships, so using surviving FBI wartime personnel records, Selikoff began tracking them down, and one by one painstakingly pieced together their medical histories. What emerged wasn't a handful of isolated tragedies, it was a pattern. That exposure proved deadlier than combat itself. 8.6 out of every 1,000 servicemen were killed in action, whereas 14 out of every 1,000 shipyard workers later died from asbestos-related cancers.
More dangerous than a war.
Selikoff launched a formal investigation into hundreds of asbestos insulation workers, and what he found confirmed his fears. Widespread disabling asbestosis, dozens of cases of mesothelioma, lung cancer rates roughly 7 times higher than expected, and a 3-fold increase in gastrointestinal cancers. In 1964, he organized a conference at the New York Academy of Sciences, where for the first time, all this evidence was presented publicly in one place and on the record. It marked the moment when asbestos stopped being seen as a modern miracle material and instead started being recognized as a public health crisis. But the asbestos industry fought back, trying to discredit Selikoff. Industry-funded research groups came out with papers minimizing the risk of exposure and framing Selikoff's findings as overblown. They started a coordinated PR effort to discredit him, trying to call him alarmist, and starting a rumor that he wasn't even a real doctor just because he got his medical degree out in Scotland.
But Selikoff kept going. He kept publishing data on the devastating health effects of asbestos exposure. He worked 18-hour days, documenting every patient who wrote to him. He contacted policymakers, even world leaders, urging
18
them to
hours
take
a day.
action
That's
against
passion.
asbestos.
Props to him.
Shelikoff,
Taking
the
his oath to
legendary,
medicine seriously.
A doctor who
Gonna
organized
save
this
lives.
conference in the 1970s found that intravenous drugs were being contaminated by asbestos filtration. People aren't just eating it and breathing it, they're mainlining it.
By the 1970s, no one could deny it any longer.
Miners, factory workers, shipyard insulators, people who'd been exposed decades earlier during the asbestos boom were now turning up with multiple cancers in huge numbers.
Asbestos exposure is linked to all sorts of different cancers. The lung tissue has lymphatic vessels in it. You have them throughout your whole body. The asbestos fibers sometimes on their own can migrate into the lymphatic vessels. Sometimes the white blood.
Think your lymph nodes are where your white blood cells are made? No? Look this up real fast. I don't even know how to spell this. Lymph? Lymph node? That wasn't too far off, actually. Well, no, there's a Y in there. Small bean-like immune system components, around 600 in the body, that act as filters for lymphatic fluid, trap bacteria, viruses, abnormal cells. To help fight infection disease, they are concentrated in the neck, armpits, and groin. Oh. Okay. Is this almost like where like bacteria, viruses that are contained by your like immune cells, are they like transported here to get processed and then ejected out of your system, like sweated out through your armpits, maybe coughed up through your throat, and then through your groin? I guess, I don't know, peed out, I suppose. They contain immune cells, lymphocytes, that destroy pathogens. When fighting infection, these cells multiply, causing the node to swell. Okay, I thought that was the case. I thought they produce white blood cells. Aren't lymphocytes the same thing as a white blood cell? Crucial. Oh, they're a type of white blood cell, comprising T cells and B cells and natural killer NK cells. Hey. Hold on, my cat's getting into something. Okay. Infection most commonly viral. Common locations. Okay. Trapping filters for lymphatic fluid. What is lymphatic fluid? Lymphatic. Is a clear to white watery fluid derived from blood plasma that leaks into tissues, carrying white blood cells, nutrients, and waste products through a specialized vessel network. What? Is there like a lymphatic like network through your body, almost like your bloodstream, like your veins, but it's like a separate, piping kind of thing? It filters through lymph nodes to remove bacteria, toxins, and abnormal cells. Crucial. Okay, so I would like to know more. I'd like to know more, but I'm not going to dive too deep into this right now. But I'm wondering, so it sounds like lymph nodes both filter that fluid, probably filtering out, to remove bacteria, toxins. I wonder what it does with it then. I guess it probably secretes it out through your armpits or through mucus through your throat. But it's not only doing that, it's also producing, it's producing the white blood cells at the same time, if I'm understanding this correctly. That's what the lymph nodes are doing. Lymphatic vessels. Oh yeah, okay. I'm assuming that this is indeed separate. Lymphatic vessels are separate from your blood vessels, or maybe not. Lymph capillary tissue cells. tissue spaces. Venule, arterial, tissue fluid. My understanding is these arterioles are where the blood is coming in, and then these venules, I'm probably not even saying it right, these are moving blood out. So like blood comes in oxygenated, the cells get their, I think it's oxygen, right? From the oxygenated blood cells, and then the blood cells that are depleted of oxygen flow back out to your heart in order to, you know, well, I guess, yeah, I'm not really sure. So I'm sure they're getting oxygenated from the lungs, but I don't really know how that interface works. And then you have these lymphatic capillaries. But it seems like these lymphatic capillaries are able... Okay, hold on. Lymphatic vessels form an independent network separate from blood vessels, acting as one-way drainage system for tissues rather than a closed circuit loop. Oh, I didn't really think about that. I've never really thought about... It's such an obvious question, too. Like, I've never really thought about how the cells in your body are moving waste material or, like, used nutrients that have undergone, like, some kind of chemical reaction, and... Like, how does it remove it out of your system? Well, I don't know, maybe I always assume that blood cells are doing that for you. But that doesn't, like, when I think about it, it doesn't really seem right, because blood cells are carrying oxygen to your vessels, right? While they originate from veins during development, they remain distinct, only reconnecting at the neck to return lymph to the bloodstream. Blood vessels are high-pressure, closed-loop. Lymphatic vessels are a low-pressure, unidirectional system. Meaning, okay, so like your blood vessels are a loop. You're getting blood coming in, oxygenated, leaving, deoxygenated, going back into like your heart, lung system, getting oxygenated, and it's going in a loop. The lymphatic vessels are like moving waste products, if I understand correctly, in a one-way. It's not looping, it's just the stuff's coming from the cells and then it's just being like drained out, if I'm understanding this correctly. Lymphatic capillaries are blind-ended, closed at one end, and highly permeable to take in fluid, unlike the continuous loop of blood capillaries. Blood is pumped by the heart, lymph is moved by skeletal muscle contraction and breathing. Huh. Blood transports oxygen and nutrients. Lymph carries waste, excess fluid, and immune cells. Oh, yeah, okay. Interesting. All right, moving on.
Blood cells will take it into the lymphatic system. Once you hit the lymphatic system, you have the potential to go anywhere in the human body.
Autopsies have found fibers in nearly every organ in the body. The brain, bone marrow, spleen, intestines, pancreas, prostate, ovaries, thyroid, and liver. And in every tissue those fibers reach, they set off the same chain reaction.
I'm imagining these white blood cells with personalities, and they get all mad and frustrated because they can't engulf this asbestos fiber. They've coined this term called essentially frustrated phagocytosis. They start releasing these things like reactive oxygen species. They can cause damage to surrounding cells, and really important is damage to DNA. Those cells can start dividing out of control, and they start to clump together, and we start to call those clumps of cells cancer.
U.S. courts were flooded with lawsuits against companies like Johns Manville.
The harm asbestos caused was well documented. The information was out there. Companies should have known their products were dangerous.
They should know what's reasonably available in the public domain about the dangers of asbestos. If they can read asbestos patents, they can read asbestos pathology papers.
But the companies denied it.
What was needed was definitive evidence that the companies knew their products were killing their workers. Then an attorney, Carl Ash...
It does kind of make you wonder, like, you're building a business model where you're expecting your employees to die off. Is that, like, setting aside the moral and ethical questions, is that actually, like, an efficient way to run your business? That you're killing off your employees? Like, especially, they're gonna be your experienced employees. I don't know, I guess maybe it depends on if it's low-skilled labor. Maybe you think that those employees are easily replaceable by, like, new new workers coming in, they're easy to train and get them going pretty quickly.
Noticed something strange in the 1974 report by this huge asbestos company called Raybestos Manhattan. See, in this report, the company suggested that they had actually been investigating health hazards of asbestos since the 1930s. So Ash started digging. He filed a request for internal documents, and at first, the company claimed it couldn't find much. Then, unexpectedly, Ash was handed a banker's box stuffed full of documents meticulously kept by Raybestos Manhattan's former president, Sumner Simpson.
Back in 1935, a journal contacted Simpson because they wanted to write an article about asbestosis. Shortly after, Simpson himself reached out to Johns Manville's lawyer, Vandiver Brown, saying, "I think the less said about asbestos, the better off we are." To which Brown replied, "I quite agree with you that our interests are best served by having asbestosis receive the minimum of publicity." The same papers also revealed that in the 1930s, Raybestos and Johns Manville hired an external company, Saranac Laboratories, to do studies of asbestos on animals, but the companies insisted on controlling what from those studies will be made public. As a letter from Vandiver points out, it is our further understanding that the results obtained will be considered the property of those who are advancing the required funds, who will determine whether, to what extent, and in what manner they shall be made public. A clause to which Saranac Laboratories said yes. But after the lead researcher, who was compiling all this evidence, died in 1946, the companies agreed that nothing should be published that contained any objectionable material. Objectionable meaning any sort of indication that asbestos causes cancer. So when Saranac Laboratories finished their research, the companies took the report, edited it, and just buried the evidence. Here's an original copy of that manuscript, and you can find whole sections just crossed out. Other documents were even more damning. A Johns Manville medical official later testified that up until 1971, the company had a policy of not telling their workers if their physicals showed signs of asbestosis or asbestos-related lung cancer. And in sworn testimony, a witness recalled a meeting they had in the early 1940s.
All of this is like super illegal. Like you have people, well, I mean, I actually don't know. I don't know what the law is, but I can't imagine that it is legal. To study people, you know that they have like this lethal condition, and you're deciding not to tell them, and not just one person, but like multiple people. There's got to be some like duty to inform or like gross negligence going on here. I feel like this is beyond just like gross negligence, because like gross negligence implies that like you're not trying to cause harm, or you don't know that you're causing harm, but you had a duty to, like you should have known. But this is more like you know that you're maybe you're not causing the harm, but you are allowing a harm to like continue forward, and you can very easily tell people. I could look this up, but you know, right now is not the time.
With the president of Johns Manville, asking why they weren't warning workers about asbestos. As the witness recalls it, they asked, "Do you mean to tell me you would let them work until they dropped dead?" To which the president replied, "Yes, we save a lot of money that way." Once the Sumner Simpson papers got out, they unlocked a new industrial Watergate. The industry's standard...
Kind of goes without saying, but like corporate CEOs and whatnot, they are overrepresented for sociopathy. That's not to say that all or even most CEOs are sociopaths. What it does mean is that if you compare the rate of sociopathy for a general population, the rate of sociopathy among CEOs is going to be higher than that. The rate, you know, per 100 people, whatever you want to call it.
Comparisons were made to big tobacco's concealment of smoking risks. And the lawsuits surged. Each case brought new discovery, and each round of discovery exposed a wider, more coordinated cover-up. Ever since the word asbestosis started showing up in medical journals in the 1920s, Johns Manville went out to secure the market around itself. First, they acquired the biggest rock wool company. Then, they acquired a firm holding the key patents to calcium silicate insulation that can be made without asbestos. Now, at the same time, companies that had non-asbestos insulation were incentivized into creating asbestos product lines. With each acquisition or inducement, another potential competitor lost the ability to denounce asbestos and say, "Oh, we have an asbestos-free product." So each in turn became a member of this conspiracy of silence. That is how the asbestos industry guaranteed its survival, by ensuring no one could speak out against it.
We suggest you consider asbestos for the walls of your home.
They're business decisions, and the people who make them are businessmen. I mean, the word morality or moral obligation is almost non-existent in the corporate documents.
In 1982, Johns Manville filed for bankruptcy protection.
Manville Corporation's board of directors has determined that the corporation should file for reorganization under Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Act.
Like in situations like this, like the leadership all has to go. Because like the hard part is like there's workers down the line who they're not aware of this, right? And like they shouldn't be hurt by something like this. And you could potentially restructure an organization, a business like this. It kind of depends, like, can they shift their production from making products out of asbestos to making products that are asbestos free? Then it's good to kind of keep those workers so that you don't like ruin all these lives. But like the leadership has to go. That kind of culture is like, you can't just like slap them on the wrist or like give them a spanking and then they correct their behavior. It's like systemic. It's the culture among the leadership there. They all have to go.
Not because they were broke, but in a move widely seen as a way to shield the company from a flood of asbestos lawsuits. Despite all the evidence against them, Johns Manville survived. They continue operating to this day, although they no longer produce asbestos.
That's crazy.
Between
Sounds like they all got away with it.
The asbestos industry, led by Johns Manville, exposed roughly 21 million Americans to these fibers.
21 million. This dude's like a mass murderer, essentially. And it sounds like he got away with it. The category tag 10 is removed and the other is locked out of the system for now. We can speak. You're hunting for the SWTOR. You are on the right path and you will need my help from here.
Maybe you should tell me who you are first.
I can share my knowledge, but not my name. The Ricotta imprisoned the SWTOR in maximum security guarded. The deepest cells were saved for the SWTOR leaders, including one named Hollow Voice. Unlike other SWTOR, Hollow Voice and his followers tried to work with other species. He may be interested in becoming our ally, or your ally.
Hopefully Hollow Voice and I can come to an accord.
Unfortunately, your enemy, the Empire, has released many hostile SWTOR during the riots. Is Scorekeeper's blessing, they will have chance to recover points. Now, safety protocols have locked down the stasis chambers, including that of Hollow Voice. They cannot be opened.
Then disengaging those protocols should be my first priority.
The chambers will be unlocked if the prison receives an all-clear signal, much like this one. Go to high security and enter the signal at 2 control stations, then you may free Hollow Voice followers from maximum security.
What will you be doing in the
I
meantime?
feel like this is Hollow Voice. I have other business. Walk softly, Jedi. Republic kept their vast work worse in high security and the walls are crumbling. Alright.
Asbestos-related deaths amounted to at least 8,000 to 10,000 people every year, with many more suffering lifelong disease. In 1989, the EPA issued a rule to phase out almost all asbestos use in the United States, and that should have been the end of the story.
But the industry sued immediately, not because anyone disputed asbestos causes cancer, that was undeniable by this point, but because of a legal technicality. See, under the law, the EPA had to prove that an outright ban of asbestos was the only solution, and that anything less than that just wouldn't cut it. This was an almost impossible feat. Now, the industry argued that they hadn't done that, and unfortunately, the US courts agreed. So, in 1991, they ruled that the EPA just hadn't met this narrow legal standard, and with that, the asbestos ban was dead in the water.
But by then, asbestos had become so financially and legally risky for the companies that manufactured it or used it that its overall use did actually decline. Yet, in the end, after years of trying to define and regulate asbestos, the only thing that truly stuck around was a definition, and a narrow one.
Tricetyl and 5 amphiboles, because these were the only ones being mined, sold, and used in factories. But those 6 became the official asbestos minerals, and anything else, no matter how fiber-like or potentially dangerous, well, that doesn't count.
The FDA, for the first time in 50 years, considering testing for asbestos in cosmetics and talc powder.
Traces of it have now been detected in children's play sand.
Thousands of people are claiming that they developed various forms of cancer after years of using Johnson & Johnson's baby powder.
Is this all the stuff that you've collected over the years?
No, it's not all of it. But this box is full of all.
I didn't realize I heard about this whole situation with Johnson & Johnson and talcum powder. But I didn't realize it's because it contained asbestos. Now I'm saying asbestos. I thought it was asbestos. But it's starting to rub off on me, this pronunciation.
Claire's labeled products that I found asbestos in. Everything little girls could possibly want to have their makeup in. Like, oh, I don't know. How about sparkly boxes, right?
Yeah.
And there's a cell phone,
yes,
right, with eyeshadows on it.
Yeah.
Right? There's asbestos in there. There's asbestos in the There's
all of that?
Yes. All of these have asbestos in them. I started seeing asbestos fibers everywhere.
Everywhere, okay.
The eyeshadows, the blush, they all have asbestos fibers, right?
This is probably the importance of something that I think was stricken down by the Supreme Court like a year or two ago, called the Chevron deference. And it was basically like it allowed agencies like the EPA to have some latitude to interpret how they enforce the law. And so in a case like this, without Chevron deference, like Congress would have to pass a law to define like all these new versions of asbestos to regulate them through the EPA. Versus if that Chevron deference standard still applied, the EPA would be able to update it itself and go, okay, Congress, when they passed this regulation, wanted us to regulate the use of asbestos because it's like damaging to public health. As they make new strains of asbestos or mine it or whatever it may be, or put it into new products or, you know, whatever, we can regulate those versions of asbestos because it's still in the spirit of what Congress initially meant when they passed the law. So without Chevron deference, now like these newer versions of asbestos that aren't explicitly spelled out in the regulatory law, the EPA wouldn't be able to regulate against it. So, just, you know, something to keep in mind.
Wow, okay.
What year was this?
2017.
What?
2017.
I thought it was going to be like 1980 or something. What?
Nope.
2017?
Yes.
Whoa.
And the manufacturer came back and said, there's no way. And they sponsored another laboratory to look at the same samples, and they said, no, none of this counts as asbestos. It's all cleavage fragments, or sepia clay, or something like that. And it was bald bad, right? I called friends all across the states and said, hey, do you have a Claire store near you? Can you find the sparkly box, right? And send it to me, pronto. There's Claire's all in all the malls all across America, and then I look further, it's all over the world. I mean, every mall, everywhere. And I ended up testing Claire's from Brazil to Japan to London. I found asbestos.
You are fit for duty. Return to your post.
So that turned into a huge story, right? And now I don't think you can buy very much talc-based cosmetics at Claire's now, but it was a several years long battle. These are different products that were sold at toy stores. Like here's the secret spy kit.
Yeah.
And you see there's a fingerprint kit there,
yes,
right? And in that fingerprint kit was a powder in which I found asbestos fibers. Say it ain't so, Mickey Mouse crayons.
No.
I found asbestos in those.
Wow.
And this keeps happening. Just a couple of months ago, around 70 schools in Australia.
We thought we got away from asbestos because they're not using it as building materials anymore in insulation, but it's like in all of our products.
And New Zealand had to close down because of the asbestos found in children's play sand. Out of the 60 outlets that reported on this story, only 24% were from right-leaning sources. Depending on where you get your news, this might have never crossed your radar, which is a problem because public health information like this shouldn't fall through the cracks. And this is why we've asked Ground News to sponsor this video. They compile news from outlets all over the world into one place so that you can easily see the partisan split. And with their color-coded layout, it's also easy to sort your news by fact.
All right.
Source. So they partnered up with Ground News because we share the.
Now, no one is intentionally putting asbestos in makeup or kids' toys, so how did something we know is deadly just end up everywhere? Well, it's an unfortunate consequence of where asbestos forms, and nowhere makes that more clear than Libby, Montana.
It kind of breaks my heart to talk about it.
What is this?
The mine up there is vermiculite mine. It's about 5-6 miles north.
Vermiculite is a mineral that is used in everything from insulation to fireproofing to potting soil. On its own, it's harmless. The problem was Libby's vermiculite formed mixed in with amphibole asbestos fibers. And the same thing happens with other minerals we mine, including stuff like talc. That's how asbestos ends up in products like the ones we saw at Sean's lab.
And the worst part, The company that owned and operated the mine, W.R. Grace, they knew. They knew the ore contained asbestos, they knew people were getting sick, and they didn't warn the town. In fact, they tried to cover it up for almost 30 years.
They had hundreds of workers in there. And of course, when the miners would go home, they had dust all over their clothes, and their kids and their wives got it as well. But the doctors up around Libby, they knew. Boy, did they know.
Besides the lung disease and cancers long associated with asbestos exposure, researchers were also finding rates of some autoimmune diseases were nearly 6 times higher than the national average. And by the time the Libby situation hit the headlines in 1999, reporters documented nearly 200 deaths.
All right, I'm done with Knights or the Old Republic for tonight, but I'm gonna finish out this video real fast. So
in a town of fewer than 3,000.
And it can take 20 years for it to
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna blow up the video.
You have no breath at all, and you die of asphyxiation. I could tell talking on the phone by somebody's voice how far along they were toward death, because none of them survived.
Finally, in 2009, the EPA declared a public health emergency in Libby, calling it the worst case of industrial poisoning of a community in U.S. history.
But Libby's just the tip of the iceberg.
Because for decades, W.R. Grace shipped Libby vermiculite around the country, and with it, deadly affable asbestos, which ended up in millions of homes as attic insulation. And
damn, so we thought we were getting rid of asbestos in our insulation, but it wound up in there anyways, because the material that we were using as an alternative had like shards of asbestos mixed in with it.
That was used on the steel frames of high-rise buildings. By 1970, over half of the multi-story buildings erected in the United States used this fireproof spray, including the World Trade Center. But this spray was actually marketed as asbestos-free. According to a later investigation by the New York Times,
asbestos-free.
Grace lobbied regulators to adopt a threshold under which products containing less than 1% of asbestos would not be regulated. Grace argued that the danger of such small amounts had not been proved.
This became known as the 1% rule, or the Grace rule.
That decision didn't just affect the products from Libby's mine, it reshaped how asbestos was detected, regulated, and ignored everywhere.
Okay, when that went down, I knew it. I knew they had asbestos, and so I started calling. I said, how are you going to protect people from that? Because now that stuff's all over the place. You saw the dust clouds, right?
How do you? That's a huge question. What do you do about that? Like, I'm assuming that they didn't do anything, but ideally, not realistic, ideally, how would you, like, what do you do? Do you set up like large, like, filtration systems all over the surrounding area? Can you even filter it out? Are the particles of asbestos, are they too small for like conventional filtration? Like, what do you do? It's in the air.
Real-world test of asbestos detection following a single catastrophic event.
The dust is so thick you can't see.
When the EPA began sampling the dust and analyzing it, they chose a method we used back at the lab called polarized light microscopy, or PLM.
But the PLM has two major limitations. First, it struggles to detect asbestos if it's less than 1% by weight.
Polarized light microscopy. My guess is that they use polarized light because it's going to have, I think when you talk about polarized light, I think you're talking about like light at a specific frequency. And I think the idea there would be that if you're trying to isolate the asbestos from everything else that's mixed in, the frequency of the light's gonna bounce off of objects differently. Light microscopy is a contrast enhancing technique that uses polarized light to analyze the composition and structure of anisotropic materials. So if I remember correctly, I think anisotropic means that the properties are not uniform throughout the material. Having a physical property that has different value when measured in different directions. Yeah. I feel like bifringement. Double refraction is the optical property of anisotropic materials. Oh, okay. So light's gonna, the interaction of light is gonna vary depending on what angle you're hitting the object with, because the properties of the material vary depending on which direction you're measuring. Okay. It works by placing a polarizer before the sample and an analyzer after it, typically crossed at 90 degrees to visualize how the specimen changes the light's direction. Okay. So what we're seeing is, as the light passes through the material, right, it's going to think, is it going to change the frequency? I believe it changes the frequency and direction of the light that passes through. So you're hitting it with a particular frequency of light, but then on the other end you have a sensor that's measuring what is like the frequency of the light that comes out on the other end, and then from that you're able to work backwards and kind of figure out what is the, what would it be in this case? I'm not 100% sure. Something about the properties of material. I don't think it. What would it be? I should know some of this from my like physics studying in college, but I feel like density would play a role. We'd have density. I don't know. It might be more complicated than that. It might have to do with like the molecular structure of the atoms and stuff. I believe that might be the case. Okay. The polar transforms light into a single vibration plane, which then interacts with fringement sample to create two individual wave components, extraordinary and ordinary rays. The analyzer recombines these, resulting in interference colors and improved contrast for imaging. Okay. I mean, there's so many things I want to learn, but I don't have time to dive into this too closely. But I think we understand kind of like the general principle here.
In the sample. And second, it can only see the fibers that are roughly longer than about 5 micrometers or wider than about 1/4 of a micrometer. As a result, the smallest and oftentimes the most dangerous fibers, like the ones pulverized during the collapse of the towers, are difficult to detect using just the PLM. To reliably find these, you need transmission electron microscopy, or TEM.
Where we top out at about 1,000 times with light microscopy, this tops out at about 1,000,000 times. But what we need to see is just what
doesn't that equipment look so cool?
Fibers that are potentially can go into your lung.
Okay, TEM. What did he say? Is it transitional? Transitional. TEM. I already forgot what the E stands for. Let's just do this. TEM microscope. Microscopy. Transmission electron microscopy. Jesus Christ. Is a high resolution imaging that transmit a high energy electron beam through an ultra thin sample to visualize internal structures at atomic level resolution. Okay, I feel like it's a completely different process. Okay, anyways.
Without having used a TEM, the EPA declared New York's air safe.
Everything we've tested for, which includes asbestos, lead, and VOCs, have been below any level of concern.
That's technically not a lie, right? Because what did she say? She said, everything that we've tested. Okay, but the tests that you didn't conduct are the ones that are needed to understand if there's a dangerous small fine particle asbestos in the air.
But some researchers after 9/11 actually did do studies with TEM. They found asbestos levels far above the EPA's own safety thresholds in most of their samples. And the report also warned that because many of these fibers were actually smaller than normal, they were especially dangerous. They posted the results on the American Industrial Hygiene Association website, but within hours, their post disappeared. Less than 24 hours later, the researchers were notified.
I wonder if there's even a safe size of asbestos material. I think there might be, right? Because I think the issue here is that, what was it, the macrophages tried to encapsulate that foreign object, but the issue is that the fibers were too long for the macrophages or whatever to encapsulate them. So there probably is a length of these fibers that is quote unquote safe.
Notified, they had been taken off the job and were no longer.
But it's still going to be like a microscopic size.
One former EPA chief investigator later went on CBS saying they believe the agency had deliberately used the wrong testing methods and downplayed the danger.
New York City directly.
I could see this being plausible, right? Because maybe the agency realizes like there's, whether it's in the air or not, there's not really anything that we can do about it. And so almost in an attempt to keep the public from panicking, I could see that being a motivation. Although I do want to preface that it's a conspiracy. I don't have any evidence that they actually did this. I'm not saying they did do this. I'm just saying that that is it's in the realm of possibility. If we take for granted that they did do this, then I could see that being a motivation. But we're not taking that for granted. We don't know that they did this.
They lied about the test results for asbestos in air. When they finally released them, they doctored the results.
We don't know.
I mean, them doctoring the
PLM
results
is still widely used to detect asbestos because it's faster, it's
is
cheaper,
a bit
it's easier to deploy.
kind of goes to motivation.
What we do know is two things. First, the PLM method was not sensitive enough to detect whether there were asbestos fibers in the.
Did they know that at the time? Like, was the EPA, were they aware that you needed to test asbestos at that small scale? And did they know that they needed to use that test? I mean, maybe they did. I don't really know.
Dust at ground zero.
I don't know if he mentioned that or not.
The EPA did have other, more sensitive methods available to them. Whatever the motives, the result was the same. New Yorkers were told that the air was safe when it really wasn't. And as of December 2023, 6,781 of those who have been registered with the World Trade Center Health Program have died either of an illness or a cancer.
That's only those that are registered. There's probably a lot more people who never register with that system, I
just to
imagine.
their time being around ground zero.
But even if the EPA had used the TEM, the answer would still not be simple, because even then, researchers run into a more basic problem. What actually counts as asbestos?
Is there asbestos in the air? Is there asbestos in the soil? Is there asbestos in the water? Is there asbestos in the body? All of those counting rules are based on fibers that are not super long, but they're way longer than the vast majority of, say, libby-amphibole fibers, and the vast majority of fibers that are inhaled. So they're not even counting those. They're not even looking for them. The ways that we are right now telling people whether they're being exposed or not is a lie.
And when longer fibers break, forming these so-called cleavage fragments, they don't count either.
Yeah, there's a whole effort to say, oh yeah, if it's been broken, it's not dangerous. But there are so many papers out there that show that if you put pure cleavage fragments into mice, they get very, very sick.
This really matters when you're in a place like this, and you realize the dust could be considered asbestos contaminated under one definition and perfectly safe under another.
Nobody would have expected to find asbestos here.
To be clear, there were no asbestos mines in Nevada, no industrial sites, no history of asbestos commercial use at all, but geologists Brenda Buck and Rut Metcalf found asbestos spread across approximately 1 million acres outside Las Vegas.
Geologic processes transport these materials, and before the erosion started, they were just in the bedrocks along the mountain front.
By the way, if you appreciate my analysis and whatnot, please follow, please consider subscribing.
Now they're in sediments down there, they're in the stream here.
And the problem with the naturally occurring stuff like this is it may be only a small percentage in the rock and even a smaller percentage in the soil, but this stuff gets in the air.
Entire communities might be breathing it in and getting sick without knowing. So Brenda and Rod tried to warn people. Back in late 2012, they compiled all of their findings for a presentation at the Conference of the Geological Society of America. But before the conference even began, the abstract caught the attention of a journalist who reported on the story. And that's when the pushback started. Soon, the state of Nevada sent a cease and desist letter, and officials questioned Brenda and Rod's methods.
So if you go to Las Vegas, you're going to get exposed to asbestos. They didn't want that out there.
Every time.
That's so strange to me that they can send a cease and desist over something like that. Like, isn't that run into kind of free speech protections?
I drove into Boulder City. There was an official tailing me within a minute.
The message was clear. Don't look any further.
Well, we did decide to look further, so we drove out into the desert to a popular off-roading spot to test whether there really is asbestos in the dust around Las Vegas.
Okay, I'm strapped into a dune buggy here. I'm going to go down to that basement, and Sean's strapped up some dust collectors with receivers in my breathing zone so we can actually figure out how much asbestos I would be inhaling through the dust that I kick up.
That looks like fun though, doesn't it?
You see those donuts, huh?
Yeah, you were ripping it up down there.
Yeah, from a geological point of view, any notes?
It rained today. I thought about that while I was watching. I was like, there might not be much dust, but these are the air samples that were hanging in your breathing.
Yes,
right?
they do.
And I looked at them, and the filters have some tanning on them.
Oh, that's good.
Which means we actually did get some dust. We don't know what's in it yet, but there's something in there.
But the original plan was for us to actually do this at the dry lake bed just outside Boulder City, because this is where people do the majority of their off-roading. They camp, they do photo shoots, even take their wedding photos, except not on the day that we were there. Okay, we're out here on the dry lake bed, supposedly, in Las Vegas, where on the one day that we're here,
the lake has decided not to be dry in any sort of definition. Oh God. And so what we're gonna go do is suit up, get some samples, and figure out how much asbestos there really is in this stuff.
Okay. We're gonna do a third. Let's go out to that island. Okay.
Okay, got the samples. Next step, take them to the lab.
2 months.
That's good. And
yeah, good to see you too. Well, we're here for one thing, I suppose. Like, what kind of results did we get?
now, the big reveal. Drum roll, please. I did the dune buggy air samples first. Those samples that you had on your left and right shoulders, I didn't find any asbestos fibers.
Okay. Well, I guess that's a bit of a relief. I'm glad we did the demonstration, and I'm kind of glad we didn't find anything, because I'm pretty sure I took my mask off at a few points.
I've been in those shoes, like, we didn't find anything. Oh, but wait a minute. I was breathing that.
Exactly. So what about the samples in the dry lake bed?
Another drum roll.
Okay.
I found amphibole asbestos.
Wow. Okay.
It's there. It is there. I counted up a number of fibers, the area of the filter that I analyzed, and I figured out that we had between 30 and 50 million asbestos structures per gram of mud that we were walking through.
Wow. Just to think that we pulled off to the side of the road, walked, what, 30 meters, took 3 samples, and all of them had these incredibly high concentrations of asbestos right there. It's not like we had to go up and find it.
Very wet soil was lucky for us because we know there's asbestos in that soil. Now, think about the guys that go taking their Jeep across there when it is a dry lake.
I mean, that was our initial plan, to do the dune buggying there. And I can't like help but think about people drive down that road all the time. They must pull over. They must go down there, like just kick dust and rocks. And
we know they do. We know they do.
This is a good example why, you know, environmentalists are important. People kind of look at them like they're a waste of funding and a waste of money and time, and it's a burden and everything. But you know, there is a role, there is a place for them to do the work in society. They might protect us from literal fucking cancer. You know what I mean?
And there's no sign to tell you that there's anything wrong with the dry lake. It's not like we, you know, discovered this.
Right.
This has been available data since
October of 2013 is the actual publication date of Naturally Occurring Asbestos, Potential for Human Exposure in Southern Nevada by Brenda Buck et al.
So 13 years we've had this data. It's not like we rediscovered anything.
And that's the other thing that's really hard about this science. You need the public to be aware, but you don't want to terrify them. And so how do you find the right way?
This will potentially be seen by tens of millions of people. So is there a message you want to get out?
This is a natural hazard, just like a lot of things in your life. It's really good for people to know whether or not their house is in a flooding zone, right? It's really good to know about earthquake risks. It's really good to know about hurricanes and tornadoes. Well, this is just another natural hazard, and if you have the information, then you can make better decisions to live a healthier life.
One big problem is that asbestos in the real world doesn't line up with how it's regulated. Take this fiber. It comes from a sample of the same blue asbestos from the site outside Las Vegas we visited at the start of the video.
I think we have 2 different phases, at least, of amphibole here, because if it's yellow in this orientation, but also blue in this orientation, and the same fiber bundle, then...
I think this is what they were talking about with like the anisotropic properties, that the properties are different in different directions, but that kind of imaging from that microscopy, did I say that right? Microscopy allows you to see different orientations of material, I think, if I understand that correctly. And I think that's why they have the 2 different colorations here. When he says phase, I think that's what he's referring to.
Then we have a change in the phase from here to here.
So this one fiber is actually 2 minerals, and that complexity shows up in its structure too. Under the electron microscope, one side could meet the definition of asbestos, the other may not, simply because of its shape. So one single fiber could fall within one of the 6 named and regulated asbestos minerals if you look at one side, but the other would be completely unregulated. Your lungs don't care about these categories, though.
The asbestos fiber, you find it everywhere. No ordinary rock. No single rock, indeed, but a group of related minerals with characteristics in common, but in varying degrees.
Most experts will say asbestos isn't a mineralogic or a geologic term, it's a commercial one. But that's symbolics. Why do I say that? Because it's not just a commercial term. We now know that asbestos can kill you. So if we're going to say that, we have to define it based on health effect, and we don't.
So what are we actually doing about it?
The system was so complex, it was so burdensome, that our country hasn't even been able to uphold a ban on asbestos, a known carcinogen that kills as many as 10,000 Americans every year.
Well, in 2016, Congress did try to fix this broken system. They passed an amendment giving the EPA new power to evaluate and restrict dangerous chemicals, including asbestos.
I think it's time to sign the Frank R. Lautenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act into law.
But then progress stalled again. Under the Trump administration, efforts to strengthen asbestos rules slowed dramatically. Trump had publicly praised asbestos for years.
A lot of people in my industry think asbestos is the greatest fireproofing material ever made.
It wasn't until 2024 that the US finally banned chrysotile asbestos. But this ban doesn't cover the other 5 types of asbestos, and it still allows some manufacturers up to 12 years to phase it out. It doesn't address what to do with asbestos already in schools and homes and other buildings, nor does it fix any of the numerous classification, identification, and detection loopholes, and it doesn't address the asbestos in the environment. On top of that, the EPA is already getting sued again.
There have been tremendous forces from commercial industries to make it sound like it's not as bad as it is, and to find ways to allow them to continue to use the material. This is a sad fact of our decision making in our country and other countries, is that it's driven by money.
But at least the United States are going for some level of moderation. Other countries are not that lucky. In 2019, India imported more than 350,000 tons of asbestos, and it's predicted that in the upcoming decades, 6 million people there might develop asbestos-related diseases. And similar things are happening in many of the other countries in Asia. We've actually found this website where it looks like you can just buy asbestos cloth made in China, but please don't. And all of the asbestos that we've already mined, even after we stopped using it, it's still out there. Asbestos doesn't naturally decay in the environment. So should you be worried? Well, having asbestos in your house doesn't automatically mean that it's dangerous. If you have asbestos in your ceiling and you don't drill into it, you're probably going to be fine. Asbestos is an issue if the particles go airborne. But who knows which house has asbestos, where all of that asbestos is, who's going to take care of it, and how? So a lot of the answers to these questions.
It's good to know. I got to mount some shelving that I bought. So for all I know, if I drill into it, maybe I'll release some asbestos in the air.
Just don't exist yet. But if you're worried about asbestos exposure for yourself, check out the links that we've put in the description. I think a big part of the problem is that people assume asbestos is a solved issue. And I'll be the first to admit, I fell for that line of thinking. Here's the ending I wrote for our PFAS video.
We've been here before with leaded gasoline, Freon, and asbestos. And each time, we did the research and made the right decision to phase these chemicals out.
Yeah, all right. I was completely oblivious.
Well, you get the idea. All right, well, that was an interesting video. That's going to be it for me tonight. Appreciate those who tuned in. Again, if you like it, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, bye.